Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 236. That's Planet Extra Podcast. I am Chester Chidello, a host of Planet America on ABC Australia, and this is an official podcast of the ABC. So say hi to the Ombudsman for me. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening, you can find us on YouTube at the PEP with Chaz and Dr. Dave channel, and you can find highlights there too as well. And we're on Facebook at the Chaz from Planet America channel. You also find timestamps and show notes in our blurbs. And if you leave a comment under our current episode video, we are likely to see it. You can also tweet us or blue sky us at PEPCHASTRDAVE. That's at PepChazDrDave. If you want to chat to some fellow peppers, you can join our Discord server, which has been very helpful this week to me. I will come back to that. It's on the screen now or in the blurb of the podcast. But if you want to contact me or Lockie the Lucky privately, why not email us? The address is producer@pepthepodcast.com. That address again is producer@pepthepodcast.com. And do not forget to subscribe for all that peppy goodness. It all helps. We're recording this back at the early time that we used to do this a few weeks back. Thursday afternoon, 2:40 p.m. or in America, that would be Wednesday night in New York at 11:40 p.m. How about that?
That's amazing.
Amazing, which means we're way out of date by the time you're listening to this, but that's all right. But for now, let's turn to the man who will never raise his stakes on inconsequential views. I speak, of course, about Dr. Pepper himself, Dr. David Smith.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Smith. I'm an associate professor at the United States Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. But I just want to make sure that everybody knows that I do not speak for either of those institutions. When I pep only on behalf of myself, not on any institution that I'm affiliated with. And that, of course, also includes the ABC. Good man.
We, of course, as I said, are recording on Thursday afternoon in Sydney, which means Dave's only across Wednesday's news. I'm only across Tuesday's news because I'm always 24 hours further behind than Dave. But for those who felt a pang in their heart, an emptiness in their soul because there wasn't PEP last weekend, you had to wait till Tuesday for it to come out.
Yeah.
Well, we're making up for it in a big way because
we are.
Not only do we have this one, only 3 days after the last one came out, but also there will be, I think, if the supervisor lets me, have an extra pod early next week with Bill because we want to get Bill in before the end of the year. So we're trying to squeeze him in there. So
this is quite a serious atonement for missing one PEP.
Well, I take it very seriously. I take the disappointment of our viewers very, very seriously, Dave. Of course, you're not going to hear any of that if the supervisor does not want us to have an extra pod because we will edit this all out. So if you're hearing this, you can thank the supervisor.
Yeah.
But Dave.
Yes.
What, apart from the supervisor, what are you grateful for?
I am grateful that we are back in Jacaranda season. That is the reason why I'm wearing my Connections purple T-shirt today.
So you are.
It is to celebrate the proliferation of jacarandas all over Sydney. I particularly love this time just before they're starting to really annoyingly drop their flowers everywhere, where if you live in a jacaranda-prone area, that does get a bit old after a while.
You start standing on sap.
You do. Yeah. But for now, and we've still got the smell of jasmine in the air as well. It is just a beautiful time of the year. And even though I don't speak for the University of Sydney, I will say we've got some particularly nice jacarandas on the University of Sydney's campus. It's 9 years ago now that the really famous jacaranda that had been there since 1920 keeled over. I went to the quadrangle the day that happened after news started circulating.
The day the jacaranda died.
Yeah. I went there in the middle of the day and there were already signs up in both English and Chinese telling the tourists of this tragedy that had befallen the jacaranda. And it was amazing to see it just horizontal. And it did have one last blossoming before it died. But within a year, they had replaced it with a clone of that jacaranda. So that's 8 years old now, that little clone. It'll be 20 years before it's fully grown, but it's doing a good job. I'm no longer calling it the slackaranda.
For those Americans who are listening to this and who have just been looking up jacarandas on Google.
Yeah.
They are beautiful flowers, and you may be feeling a bit jealous. You may be going, oh, I wish I was there.
They're not a native Australian tree, though.
Aren't they?
No.
Oh, where are they from?
South America, I think, is where they originate.
Okay, so maybe they got them in America as well then.
They might. I've never seen one there, but...
Yeah. Well, let me just say this. To any Americans who are feeling jealous of the idyllic portrayal you have just brought us, also yesterday it was 96 degrees in Sydney in the middle of October.
Yeah.
Like 2.5 months before it actually gets hot. It was 96 degrees.
It was pretty warm.
It was. 96 degrees in the middle of summer in Australia isn't a big deal. But 96 degrees in October, that's a big deal. So it's going to be pretty hot this year, I think, Dave.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I'm grateful for, so don't worry, you're not missing out on anything, Americans. What I'm grateful for is for, look, I would say we get 2 questions asked more than any other. At least I do. What about you? Number 1, will Trump run again in 2028? Number 2, if the Democrats take the House, what will Trump get impeached for? They're the 2 questions I get asked all the time. All right? Question 2 has just been taken off the table. We now know what he's going to get impeached for if the Democrats take the House. And I like that. Because I love a spoiler. I don't need to pay attention anymore. I've just got a rote automatic answer I can just fire off. I know the answer. We all know the answer. It was in the New York Times this week. What I am referring to, because Dave looks a little bit confused, what I'm referring to is Trump paying himself compensation.
Oh, yeah.
Back in 2023 and 2024, Trump applied through the government's administrative claims process for compensation because he says rights were violated by the FBI and special counsel investigating him for possible collusion with Russia in the 2016 election, and also the FBI violating his privacy by raiding Mar-a-Lago looking for classified documents. And the government maliciously prosecuting him for mishandling sensitive records. Now, he's estimated that he suffered about $230 million in damages. I think it's the same person who comes up with all these damage assessments from Trump. And there's someone who I wouldn't trust. I don't know if they're Trump or someone else, but I don't know if it's, what's the lawyer in The Simpsons' name?
Lionel Hutz.
I don't know if it's Lionel Hutz who's come up with these numbers, but they're pretty wild. This is obviously a travesty. If at this point you're thinking, hang on, they found classified documents at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
The raid was vindicated by the results of the raid.
Members of Trump's campaign also went to prison as a result of the first one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And you might be thinking to yourself, the only reason he isn't still facing legal issues from the classified documents case is because he's president. And so his people have killed off any attempt to get justice there. That is all true. Everything you said and I just said was true. But he's free to submit claims, Dave, that the government then rejects because they're spurious. That's okay. Anyone can submit a spurious claim. That's fine. That's not against the law. But we should take a moment to consider who it is who's going to decide on the merits of these claims. According to the DOJ, settlements over $4 million, so $230 million is a little bit over $4 million, must be approved by the Deputy Attorney General or the Associate Attorney General for the Department of Justice's Civil Division. The current Deputy Attorney General, for those who don't know, is a fellow by the name of Todd Blanche, otherwise known as Trump's lawyer. Both before he was president and, in fact, even now, he is still his lawyer. A little bit of a conflict of interest there. And the chief of Department of Justice's Civil Division is a man named Stanley Woodward Jr. He's not so well known.
No.
But let me tell you, he was the lawyer of Trump's co-defendant in the same case. So the 2 lawyers defending both Trump and Trump's people in the same case are the ones who get to decide whether they should get compensation for that case. No conflicts of interest there. And either of them could recuse themselves, admittedly, but there's no sense they're going to.
No.
Certainly no sign of that so far.
Recusal is not really the Trump guy way.
It's not. But don't worry, according to a Justice Department spokesperson, all officials at the Department of Justice follow the guidance of career ethics officials. Oh, sorry. Did I mention that Pam Bondi sacked the Department of Justice's top ethics advisor 4 months ago and hasn't hired a replacement yet? Did I mention that? There is no one. There's literally Todd Blanche is going to turn to an empty chair and go, "Is that okay?" And the empty chair is going to say, because it's an empty chair, and he'll go, "Great. If you don't say no, then it's okay." And he'll just move on his way. One more thing. Let's just say these claims are legit. They're not. But
No,
let's just use our imagination.
Yeah.
And Trump is not guilty as sin of mishandling classified documents. That $230 million of damage, he didn't pay a cent
No.
to deal with those charges. That was all from his PAC.
Yes.
He raised money from his supporters to pay for that. He didn't, even though he's a multi-billionaire, he didn't pay a cent. And he wants to profit to the tune of $230 million, even though he didn't spend a cent on it. But we're talking 100% gravy here. This is what he says. Let's hear what he has to say.
But as far as all of the litigation and everything that's been involved, yeah, they probably owe me a lot of money. But if I get money from our country, I'll do something nice with it, like give it to charity or give it to the White House where we restore the White House. And we're doing a great job in the White House. As you know, the ballroom is under construction. It's going to be, they've been trying to get it for 150 years, and it's really, I think it's going to be fantastic. But
that bloody ballroom, shut up about the ballroom anytime anyone asks you a question about anything other than a ballroom. Anyway, he got back to the question eventually, and he said this.
All I know is that they would owe me a lot of money, but I'm not looking for money. I'd give it to charity or something. I would give it to charity, any money. But look, what they did, they rigged the election. And as you know, we had, in one case, 60 Minutes had to pay us a lot of money. George Slobodanopoulos had to pay us a lot of money, and they already paid. You know, they paid me a lot of money because what they did was wrong. And, you know, when somebody does what's wrong. Now, with the country, it's interesting because I'm the one that makes the decision, right? And, you know, that decision would have to go across my desk. And it's awfully strange to make a decision where I'm paying myself. In other words, did you ever have one of those cases where you have to decide how much you're paying yourself in damages? But I was damaged very greatly. And any money that I would get, I would give to charity.
No, I've never had one of those cases where I had to decide how much I had to pay myself in damages because I'm not the most corrupt president in history. So I've never had that experience.
Wouldn't the basis of any legal system that is worthy of the name legal system be that you're not the judge of your own case?
Yes, Dave, that's correct. It would be. But I've left out the best part. If he does pay himself off,
yes,
we might never know because it doesn't get publicly released. So there's that as well. So getting back to what I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
If the Democrats win the House, I'm 100% sure they're going to look into whether he's been paid off or not.
Yeah.
When they have the House, they'll be able to find out, even though it hasn't been publicised.
Yes.
If they find that he has paid himself off $230 million to compensate him for being investigated for crimes that he actually committed and got away with, and the Democrats find that out, there is simply no doubt he is getting impeached over this.
Yeah.
You could not dream up a more obviously impeachable offence than this. So anyway, I appreciate the spoiler, guys. Thank you for that. We can all check out now, go on holiday. We can go play the Jacarandas. We'll return in 18 months for the fireworks if the Democrats win the House. Thank you. I'm grateful. You have anything to add on that story?
Oh, I'm sure some of that money will go to charity.
Yeah.
Some little league team is going to get Trump was right about everything house.
I'm not saying he won't give it away to charity because he does do that. When I say charity, I don't mean the Save the Children Fund. I mean the Ballroom Fund.
Yes,
like he does that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's. I'm not saying he won't give it away.
Look,
I mean, he's making so much money hand over fist. That's not a problem for him.
Yeah, maybe the White House does need a ballroom because if you were to play a game of like live action Cluedo, in there, you need every room. I'm sure it's got every other room.
I'll tell you what he needs.
What?
he doesn't need a ballroom. He needs a Scrooge McDuck room for all the money he's paying himself through illicit means, through lawsuits and through compensation. That's what he needs. He needs one of those money pools. Yeah.
I suppose my final comment will be that $230 million, that's cash, right?
That's cold hard cash.
Yeah, that's a lot more real than most of the other wealth he claims to have.
Yeah, that's true.
Like that 230 million figure might have been arrived at by calculating how much money does he actually have.
Yeah, no, it could be the case.
Yeah,
could be the case. All right, let's get on to a little bit of. Okay, now Dave's going to look confused through this because most of these are correspondence from the last PEP with Jared. But that's okay. He's going to be especially confused by this first one. The CLEO Bachelor of the Year correspondence. Jeff says, I was just flying over Eastern Europe, Chaz, and thought you'd want to see this. And he's right. He's right. I did want to see that. I'm very excited about the Eastern Europeans getting on board to promote me for an award that stopped being handed out 10 years ago. Thank you. Do you have any idea what that's referring to, Dave?
Fortunately, I was briefed on this.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Right.
Dave was actually at a news agency on the way over. And
That's right.
He happened to spot the new issue of CLEO where they had this. Thanks for taking a photo, Dave.
Yeah, because I wasn't going to buy it, but yes.
They definitely got my best ever photo up there as their front cover photos. So
yes,
I can appreciate that.
For those who aren't seeing this CLEO mock-up cover with a very realistic depiction of Chaz also contains 9,922,764 blogs to read before you die. Exclusive 6+ hour interview inside.
Oh, it's good. It's good stuff, a lot. Comedy. Some No Kings correspondence while we're at it.
Okay.
From Dressy. Just a one-liner, but it's a fair point.
Yep.
I hope someone responded to Mike Lee's Boomers Can't Dance post with a video of Trump. It's a very fair call. I hadn't thought of that one. Nobel Peace Prize correspondence from Handel. And this is I did not know this. Maybe you knew this, Dave. Machado was nominated by Marco Rubio.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
I didn't realise that.
That does not surprise me at all. I didn't know that.
And they turned around and dissed her when she won.
Yeah. Well, no, the White House dissed her.
Yeah, Marco didn't.
Yeah, Marco. No. I mean, I suspect on some level Machado is who Marco Rubio wishes he was working for.
Yeah.
Not Trump. I mean, if she was the leader of Venezuela. No, they're very much in line with with Rubio's view. What's really interesting about this is actually how much Rubio has been able to push regime change in Venezuela to the top of the agenda.
We have Venezuela coming up.
Okay.
We have an update. So say that for that.
Yes.
Okay.
Just on the No Kings thing.
Yeah.
How was it that Republicans landed on this strategy of dismissing them all as boomers?
Well, there were a lot of old people there.
There were a lot of old people. Yeah. Do they remember something called the Tea Party protests?
That is fair. That's definitely
also,
fair.
have they ever actually seen a Turning Point USA college event and seen how many 70-plus people are there?
Oh, I reckon there are more 70-plus people at No Kings event than the Turning Point event.
Chaz, that's because there were 7 million people at the No Kings event.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, it's a great call on the Tea Party. Like, I would love to see an age breakdown between the Tea Party and No Kings.
Yeah.
Because look, they were definitely old. But yeah, the Tea Party, very old.
Yes.
Yes. Contronym correspondence. We were talking about contronyms for a while.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Do you know what contronym is? Do I need to explain? I'll explain for the people at home.
That's a word that's the opposite of
itself.
Of itself.
Yeah, we're two different versions of the same word.
Like inflammable.
Oh, look at that. Where were you when we were talking to Jared? That's a beauty. What was the one Jared was talking about? It was
Sanction.
Sanction.
That's a good one, yes.
Yeah. Well, Thomas through.
I'm pretty sure there was a connections grouping recently that involved Contranyms.
Yeah, that's how I knew it.
Yeah.
That's how I knew because I was saying I remember that's a thing, but I don't know what the word was.
Yeah.
There were two that Thomas suggested. Contemporary.
Oh yes.
Contemporary. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Means I knew or from the time.
Mm-hmm.
And resign versus resign. That all AFL fans would be across that one.
Yes.
That haunts us all. They're constantly talking about re-signing people, and you get these Twitter pics that say, "Yeah, Bolton Pelly resigns." What? No, resigns. Very different.
That is a good one.
Yep. DOJ correspondence while we're out from Drongo. Okay, this is actually a question which you might be able to answer, Dave, and then I'll have a go.
Yep.
We've talked a lot about DOJ being out of control recently. Do you reckon, ask Drongo, the DOJ and FBI should be taken away from the executive branch's authority? I know traditionally there hasn't been that many issues and the Senate shouldn't have approved a bunch of podcasters, but as a guardrail for the future, do you think it would be a good idea? What do you think, Dave?
Well, I just don't see how it can be anything other than the executive branch of government. I mean, it's not part of the legislative branch of government that is making the laws, and it's not part of the judicial branch of government that is ruling on the laws. It can't be anything except part of the executive that is actually carrying out the laws. So I completely understand where this correspondent is coming from, because you can really see the potential for abuse when it's in the executive branch of government. But I think almost as a matter of definition, that's where it is.
Why couldn't you have I think I agree with you, but I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
Why? Obviously not with this Supreme Court, but with a future Supreme Court.
Yep.
Why couldn't you have a Fed-like existence for the Attorney General, where the Attorney General exists as a self-funding sort of independent body?
The Fed is okay. First of all, the Fed is still part of the executive.
Yeah, but the executive can't really do much to the Fed.
No,
at least at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why couldn't the Attorney General have the same kind of arrangement?
Yeah, I could possibly see that with the kinds of protections that the Supreme Court appears to be giving to the Fed. Yeah, I don't really see it working though. Would that mean that you would have to have attorney generals and other figures being appointed in the same way as Federal Reserve governors, that is on a long-term basis?
Yeah, they'd have to be
having a lot of
separately.
them that are then appointed in this staggered way.
Yeah,
I mean, it would certainly be very different from how it's done now.
I mean, let's put it this way: the Attorney General. I know state government isn't the same as federal government, but there are plenty of states where the Attorney General is elected separately.
That is true.
Does their own thing.
Yes, yeah. Look, I like where the commenter is coming from, but it just, I find it hard to get my head around what it would look like otherwise.
Yeah, look, I think while I'm sitting here, just like
spitballing.
Spitballing. It sounds great.
Yeah,
but I just feel like there'll be so many minor legal technicalities that would make it complicated.
Yes.
And getting past the Supreme Court is a pretty big part of it, to be honest.
Yes.
It was I can't see it, but I also am sympathetic to the thought. Look, maybe. I mean, it'd be a very different world.
It would be a very different world. Yeah.
And then finally from correspondence, we've got, of course, Jared nickname correspondence. Let's roll through them. Jared was looking for a nickname.
Oh!
From the Peppers. Dressy suggests Mondi, simple and consistent with Aussie's shortening. That's very cricketer kind of nickname, that one. Mondi.
No, it would be Mondo.
Mondo's coming. There's Mondo. Liam actually says Mondo Rock or Rocky.
Yeah. I like Mondo Rock.
Yeah, that's not bad. He's a rocky kind of a fellow. Captain from Kevin, and that's after Captain Moonshine.
Oh, that's a good one.
Moonshine. Yeah. Jamon from user RG. Digosaurus says J Money. That's very American.
That is very American. Yep.
Juicy says Jazza.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking of.
Jazza is that's definitely turning him into an Australian.
Yeah.
That's an honorary Australian right there.
Yeah.
Jazza. Lots on moonshine. There's probably the most popular one was from Sean, and a lot of people jumped on board into this one, which was Hooch, coming from moonshine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Backfive pointed out if he becomes Hooch, then I become Turner. He's saying he's my dog? Is that what you're saying? Is that where is that where you're going, Backfive? Ryan has my favourite comment involving nicknames, nothing to do with Jared. Just says, nothing will beat your nickname, Chaz the Robot. Glad you're paying attention. I'm back in year 3. Yeah. So what do you reckon?
I'm just contemplating the fact that I have worked with him at the US Studies Centre for so many years, and I've never heard anybody suggest a nickname. Now, I'm not speaking for the US Studies Centre here.
No, you made that very clear.
Yeah. That's not out of a lack of affection or anything. It's just I think that nobody has nicknamed him. So this is completely fresh territory.
Do you have a favourite?
Moonshine.
Moonshine?
Yep.
I quite like Hooch, I've got to say. By the way, Jared, after he got me to explain what the hell Hooch was referring to, he said, I like that because I've never drunk in my life. So
yes, yeah.
That seems like
that would be a pro. Actually, I'm going to suggest another one.
Yeah.
Moonshadow.
Moonshadow. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
I like that. This shadowy figure just pops up and then does 5-hour peps and disappears.
Yeah, and then he can have a theme song that's already been written for him.
Yeah. That's this relates to the thing we said before that we started filming, and I said you should say on the air. So why don't you just say on the air right now, because it's great.
Oh yeah, we were talking. We were talking about how ads don't have unique jingles anymore. That is, specific themes written for these ads, which invariably, if you're not annoyed by them the first time you hear them, you're really annoyed by them the 50th time you hear them. Now, you might think, why would anyone in their right mind want jingles back? We were talking about a particularly notorious one, which I won't mention because it's a commercial product. But
I'm not gonna say what it is.
Chaz is doing it involves someone wanting a certain type of poultry at a certain time of day. Yeah, but okay, so why would anyone want jingles? Because that's a lot better than what happens now, which is perfectly good songs get ruined by their inclusion in ads. Ad executives literally sit around and say, what is the song that people love the most that we can make them absolutely despise by subjecting it to it on ads for 18 months?
Now, I really should have played that before we started.
You really should have.
But having said that, I'm so glad that you played along, Dave, because I honestly, no sarcasm, think that is your greatest ever call. We need to bring jingles back because
just to save actual songs.
There are so few good songs these days, and those that exist are getting destroyed at a rate of knots by ads. Thank you so much for that thought, Dave.
Yeah.
This is my favourite episode of the Gruen transfer that the ABC's ever done.
Now, I've got a ridiculous number of updates because I'm rolling some over from the last pod as well.
Yeah.
I'll just spread them out throughout the app, but let's start with a few and then we'll do a bit of you and then I'll do a few more updates, etc. Argentina update. We talked about the $20 billion credit swap with Argentina to help Milei get past his next election. Also help some of Bessent's investor mates out.
Yeah.
Bessent said that they're working on a $20 billion facility that would be adjacent to the $20 billion credit swap now. And
what does that involve?
I don't know, but I do know that 20 plus 20 equals 40. So that's $40 billion of assistance for Argentina.
Facility for what?
For taking money.
Okay.
I imagine. So they're going to help them out to the tune of $40 billion in some capacity.
Yeah.
During a shutdown. That's real money, Dave.
Yeah.
$40 billion.
And that money isn't coming out of the ballroom fund.
No, it's certainly, I mean, most definitely is not.
No.
Nothing's coming out of that fund. By the way, we did discuss how pissed off American farmers already are.
Yes.
About bailing out Argentina.
Yes.
And then Argentina used that money to help undercut American farmers' potential exports to China, right? As you know, Besant tried to spin that this was in America's interest.
Yes.
Somehow, right?
Yeah. Critical country in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah. Well, this is what Trump did to help Besant spin it.
Yeah.
He just undermined him completely, as he often does.
What's the benefit for United States in helping this way Argentina?
Just helping a great philosophy take over a great country. Argentina is one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever seen. And we want to see it succeed. Very simple. I mean, we don't have to do it. It's not going to make a big difference for our country.
Thanks for that, Trump. That's exactly what Besant wanted to hear.
Wow.
Imagine trying to...
I've never been there, but I have heard it's very beautiful.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Yeah. There's a lot of really great art and writing and thought that has come out of Argentina.
Is that where the pink lake is, or is that Peru?
Don't know.
It's around there.
Yeah. But anyway,
this
is not an a priori reason to give it $40 billion.
No, it's not. Lucky you got the country?
Bolivia.
That's right. Dumb, Chaz, dumb. Interesting poll from The Economist on that note. Voters disapprove of the bailout by 57% to 22%. Even Trump voters disapprove 40% to 35%.
I was going to say 22%. That's well short of the 30% that literally any question gets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Trump supporters approve 35% and disapprove 40%, even when Trump's name is attached to the question. So
this is not popular.
Yes. But there's more. As I said, there's an update. Trump also said that America may, like he hasn't done enough already, may buy some beef from Argentina in order to, wait for it, of all the reasons, bring our beef prices down. Can you imagine how American farmers feel about that? Artificially lowering the price of beef by buying some, not from domestic ranchers, but from a country that America is already bailing out. And it's not even good beef. They've got a foot and mouth disease epidemic in Argentina at the moment. Those American farmers are like, what the hell are you doing?
Okay, I'm not laughing at foot and mouth, but this is absurd.
Yes, it is. Farm Action, an agricultural watchdog group, called the plan a betrayal of the American rancher, saying after crashing the soybean market and gifting Argentina our largest export buyer, Trump is now poised to do the same to the cattle market. The National Farmers Union said Trump recently bailed out Argentina with $40 billion in U.S. taxpayer-backed aid, and Argentina's response was to strike new deals selling soybeans to China, deals that hurt American crop farmers. The last thing we need is to reward them by importing more of their beef. Dave, what is going on?
Well, look, Trump got a lot of votes in rural areas.
Yep.
As you know, like even more so than the usual Republican advantage. Now, the problem with being a rusted on constituency is that the party that always gets your votes can do whatever they like to you. And the party that is guaranteed not to get your votes can do the same thing. So this is they can basically afford to piss rural America off as much as they like, as long as they believe they will continue to win by overwhelming margins in rural America, which is not a bad assumption.
Yeah.
This is the problem, as African Americans have discovered, with the Democratic Party, with being a rusted-on constituency. But maybe I'm misreading this. Maybe I just don't appreciate, in the same way that American farmers do, this one basic fact. Did you know that no one has ever been able to create paint that looks like gold?
I did actually. I've heard that before.
These farmers aren't seeing their piles of rotting soybeans that can't be sold anywhere. They're not seeing the bottom falling out of the cattle market. They're seeing real gold.
It's a golden era.
in the White House.
It's a golden age.
Yeah.
That maybe the ballroom can store all of America's soybeans and cattle. It's going to be big enough. Have I told you about the ballroom? It's very exciting. Got a bit of a polling update here.
Okay.
Mixed news for Trump. He's received just about his worst MSM poll ever this week. The latest AP NORC poll gave Trump 37% approval, 61% disapproval. Amongst independents, he has a job approval of 21%.
That's bad.
75% disapproval. What about the issues, you might ask? On immigration. Care to guess what his approval rating is amongst independents on immigration?
40%.
26%.
Whoa!
On the economy, could you care to guess his approval amongst independents?
26%.
18%.
Whoa!
On healthcare, I'll tell you, his approval is 16% amongst independents. They're not good numbers, Dave.
No, they're not.
And we've been hearing endlessly about how few people are identifying as Democrats recently. And I've been consistently saying these are bullshit stats. Don't worry about those stats. Well, according to Gallup, and by the way, you should disregard these stats as well. just like the other ones. I would never, I'd never take to the bank what party people identify as. Like the bodgiest stats. But anyway, according to Gallup, let's look at the graph, shall we? This quarter, it's back up to Democrats by 7 points. So more 7% more, or 7 points more Democrats, more people identify as Democrats as Republicans. And that's the highest it's been since the 2020 election, which, if you recall, Trump was not popular during.
No.
So those are super positive polls for Democrats. But here's one the other way around. Old mate Harry Enton. Just for you, Dave, every week. This is Harry Enton.
In 2018/2019, Donald Trump's net approval rating was already falling. The shutdown was eating into his popular support. It was down 3 points already at this particular point and would fall considerably more. It was very much on the decline. You come over to this side of the screen, this shutdown hasn't eaten into Donald Trump's support at all. His net approval rating is actually up a point in terms of his popular support. So the bottom line is this. The first shutdown during Trump's first term, 2018-2019, was hurting Donald Trump. This one is not hurting him at all.
There we go. There's uncharacteristic Harry Enton report there. There were no metaphors. I was expecting when he said, and it's going up, shooting up to the sky like a rocket ship, or whatever he does, but not this time.
How many days has he been trying to grow that beard?
I can't tell you that. Dave? Are you unimpressed?
I'm guessing it's actually measurable in weeks rather than days, and he should give up. Donald Trump's approval rating, as measured by averages, has been incredibly stable this year.
It has.
Yeah, like as soon as it basically found its way down to about 44, that's basically where it's been the whole time, fluctuating between 43 and 44. I could imagine events that would push it up or down, but Shutdown's not doing that.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, look, you guys might be, you can take your own poison here. I would be disregarding the AP and NRC poll completely. I think the Enton poll is the real one, that average. I think it's just, like you just said.
Yeah, you should look at the averages.
It's just stasis.
Yeah,
if
you look at the New York Times average of polls, it is just very stable. And in 2017, 2018, people had only had 2 years of Trump at that point. Like we're into year 10 or something now.
Yeah.
It has to be something pretty serious to seriously move the polls.
There's a lot of knowledge of Trump at this point in time. No King's protest update, Dave. The final estimates of the numbers at the protest are in. According to Strength in Numbers and the Crowd Counting Consortium, the median estimate is about 5 million attendees with an upper bound of 6.5 million people. So a little less than was first estimated, but still the largest single-day protesting event since 1970.
Yes. Okay. And I will correct myself from when I said 7 million. We'll revise that down to 5 million.
Yeah. That's still a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's still a lot more than Turning Point USA
gets. Yes, and still a lot more than the Tea Party got.
A lot more than the Tea Party
The Tea
got.
Party didn't even crack 1 million.
No, the Tea Party's biggest day was 350,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as arrests go, I did say that there was absolutely no violence that I knew of. There was, actually. I have since seen scattered reports of minor violence. Very minor. In Portland, 3 protesters were arrested following an alleged assault. In Chicago, 15 people were arrested after assaulting a law enforcement allegedly outside an ICE facility. Los Angeles, the police felt the need to deploy tear gas, like they often do in Los Angeles. It's just a day in the NY in Los Angeles.
I was going to say, that's called the weekend.
Not very much.
Given
the millions of people attending.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not much.
Yeah.
The right.
I've been at a rugby league game where 5 people got arrested for assaulting police officers.
Yes, exactly. I've been at rugby league matches where I'm the one who caused 5 people to get arrested for assaulting, well, both me and police officers. The right did their absolute best to find clips of people saying or doing violent things, like the usuals. The Vox Poppers were out going, so who do you want to die and why? Like that kind of stuff. There were probably 10 clips doing the rounds of people saying they wish Trump was dead or mocking Charlie Kirk's assassination, that kind of thing. There wasn't much. But you can tell they didn't land from a couple of things. First of all, Trump's attempted spin just been something totally different. He didn't try that spin. He tried a completely different kind of spin. Let's have a look.
What's your response to the protests over the weekend, the No Kings protests this year?
I think it's a joke. I looked at the people. They're not representative of this country. And I looked at all the brand new signs paid for, I guess it was paid for by Soros and other radical left lunatics. It looks like it was. We're checking it out. The demonstrations were very small, very ineffective, and the people were whacked out. When you look at those people, those are not representative of the people of our country.
Mr. President, besides San Francisco...
By the way, I'm not a king. I'm not a king. I work my ass off to make our country great. That's all it is. I'm not a king at all.
Pretty low energy, Dave.
This is one of my favourite Trump lines ever. The brand new signs paid for by George Soros.
Yes.
How much does he think a sign costs? And I've been to a lot of protests. I don't think I've ever seen a sign that isn't brand new at a protest. I mean, you will sometimes get some veterans, who are multiple protest attenders and might have a sign left over. I mean, I think unions will have standard sort of signs that they use, but
you've never been to a protest thrift shop buying second-hand signs like from St. Vincent de Paul? Yeah, it's a strange critique.
It's a very strange critique. I mean, okay, markers are not free. It's true. And that cardboard's got to come from somewhere.
Yes.
Maybe it does come from the maw of George Soros.
Maybe.
But, yeah.
Well, look, my major point is that he wasn't trying very hard there.
He really wasn't trying very hard at all.
And he wasn't even bothering with it was violent thing. Like, he just didn't even try. A few people were making the argument at the end that he made there. If Trump was a king, the protest wouldn't have been allowed to happen. There was a bit of that. Like this tweet here from Blair White. No kings, and the man was democratically elected, won the popular vote, and is allowing you to protest him. Firstly, having a king doesn't mean you can't have protests.
Yeah. There are several kings throughout history where literally the last thing they ever saw was a protest.
Yes. And secondly, I think there's a bit of an indication of where America is at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not a good indication.
No.
That there is not a positive indication, that there is a subtext in the discourse at the moment that says you should be grateful you're allowed to protest.
Yeah.
I don't like
You should be grateful that you can protest without getting shot.
Yeah. I feel like the bar's getting lowered, Dave.
Yeah.
Like it really is. Mike Johnson, and there's the other way you know that the violent thing didn't really work out.
Yeah.
Mike Johnson seemed downright bitter about the response.
They had the right to do it. Congratulations, they didn't burn any buildings down. That's a big achievement for the left to have some kind of gathering where they don't have a loot-in and riots and burn a building down. There was, I think, some in Portland. They threw bottles and bricks and stuff at the ICE facility because that's what they do for fun now out there. But they had a free speech event. Congratulations.
How peeved off is he?
Because before he was saying this was going to be a pro-Hamas hate America rally.
Yes.
The fact that they had to pivot to this is a bunch of old people with new signs paid for by George Soros just tells you how disappointed they were with the lack of violence in a gathering of 5 million people.
Yeah, they did let the side down, unfortunately. They let poor Mike Johnson down.
Yeah.
He gave them all the hype he possibly could, and they did not deliver.
No, they didn't.
I will say this, though, Dave. If the right wanted to discredit the protest, they picked the wrong tactic. They should have been focusing on the actual outrage, which was the protest theatre. Some of the lamest protest theatre I've ever seen. Now, Lockie, I want you to put the clip I just sent you about this on a loop so Dave can really take it in, because there's a lot of different aspects of this, okay? It's only a few seconds long.
Okay.
We're going to have to describe to the listeners, because some of the listeners get being a little bit annoyed at us just sitting there watching clips.
Okay.
So we need to describe to the listeners what we are seeing, okay? Now, what you're saying is ICE lice are they're sort of caught on the Constitution, it's like flypaper. I think some of them might be trying to eat holes in it. Others are sort of they're immobilized, stuck to the flypaper, stuck to the Constitution with their backs while their legs flail around. While Uncle Sam is trying to swat them with a banner. The Statue of Liberty in the background is trying to spray them. There you can see there. And Trump is somewhere off on the side in jail clothes. Do you spy anything else, Dave, worth mentioning?
And there's the word vote randomly written on something.
Yeah. So how are you finding the ICE lice? Do you think this is convincing protest theatre, or do you think I'm right that this is the greatest offence of No King's Day?
I just don't even know what to say. Like, there has been a lot of effort put into this, I suppose.
There's been a lot of effort.
This is one of the reasons why you might say that the Labor theory of value isn't entirely correct.
I gotta say, special mention. Now I've watched it about 15 times in a row. Special mention to the ICE lice, who right at the beginning of the clip there, you can see him running away with his hands in the air. And then just stopping lamely and then lying back down on the Constitution as the Statue of Liberty begins to spray him. I think he might be the Oscars winner for this particular event. It's impressive. Anyway, thought I'd share it. Dave, let's get into the China trade war.
Okay, so as you will have seen over the last few months, this trade war has followed this pattern of Trump escalating, Xi Jinping escalating, often not quite to the same extent, but in a way that is visibly more harmful.
Yeah.
Which then leads to Trump coming down and then saying he's had a great conversation with Xi Jinping and promising that negotiations are back on track, and then escalating and then again getting hit with something more harmful. So, for example, China never raises its tariffs to the same level that the United States is raising theirs, but they are definitely aware of the pressure points that can really hurt the United States. And from the beginning, this is not the first time we have talked about it this year, one of those pressure points is clearly rare earths / critical minerals.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to give a bit of background about these things, they're not the same thing. Critical minerals include things like lithium and copper. Rare earths are this specific group of, from what I understand, mainly lanthanides are the rare earth elements, and they're generally found in compounds with other things. The name rare earths is a little bit misleading because they're not especially rare. The thing is, though, they're very spread out. You have to mine a lot of ore to get the rare earths that you are looking for. 70% of the world's rare earth deposits are in China. That's 44 million tons in metric reserves. Brazil has another 21 million. India has nearly 7 million, and Australia has nearly 6 million.
Are these reserves that have been tapped, or are these like full-on reserves even that aren't in mines?
So these are just reserves,
Right.
generally. Okay, but you've made an important point here.
3 out of 3. We need to have a sting, I feel. A sting for Dave hits his mic.
And
There already is a sound effect that plays every time he does it.
That is
It
true.
goes a lot like this.
And you might also want a guessing competition. How many glasses do I break every week in my own house? Okay, but you have hit on a very good point there, right? Which is not only does China have the biggest reserves, it's got by far the most number of mines and also processing facilities.
Yes.
So it processes 90% of the world's rare earth metals, and it manufactures 93% of the rare earth magnets. Okay, so one of the things that makes this picture very difficult for the rest of the world is that rare earths, you generally don't need very many of them for any given product, but you do absolutely need them. Okay, they're absolutely necessary. Because China has developed everything to such a huge extent for so long and has such thorough and complicated supply chains, because it doesn't get all of its rare earths from China. It gets them from India and Africa and Australia, among other places. This not quite monopoly that it has means China basically sets the price on rare earths. And as vital as rare earths are, they're not actually that expensive because China has ensured that there's a very high supply of them. Now, what does that mean? That means, first of all, if China wants to, China can basically at will dramatically reduce the supply of rare earths that are available to other countries that are absolutely necessary to certain industries.
Yep.
But at the same time, it is unviable for the most part for companies in these countries to actually develop rare earths industries of their own because the prices of of rare earths are so low. It's not actually commercially viable to do this. So this is one of the ways that China has really maintained its not quite monopoly, but near monopoly on this, which gives it a huge amount of leverage. So the most recent thing that it did in response to US raising tariffs was to roll out a new licensing system for rare earths, which would effectively mean restricting the supply pretty severely on anything that had, I think that the minimum was 0.1% of Chinese rare earths in it. Okay.
Yeah, 0.1% of the value of the product.
0.1% of the value of the product.
Yeah.
So it's one of these things where often when you think of think of rare materials, you think it must only be in one place and it must be really expensive, and that's what the problem is, and the only way to get it is by having a war with whoever's got it. That's not the problem with rare earths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to pick up on what you were saying there, it's if you're a country like America who wants to create your own rare earth industry, for the reasons you just said, not only is it going to take a huge amount of government money injected in to make it viable to create the mine in the first place and the processing centre, but every single bit of product it produces is going to have to be subsidised.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's just going to cost more than the world price.
Yes, yeah. And remember, because these these minerals are so spread out. You got to mine a huge amount of ore just to get the amount that you need, even though it's a very small amount. By the way, I am by no means an expert in this, so I apologise to actual experts, like my colleague Hayley Channer from the US Studies Centre, who is so devoted to critical minerals that she named her dog after one. She named it Copper because of the colour of its fur, which is very beautiful. But your dog is also named after an element.
An element. Probably, I wouldn't describe it as a rare earth.
No.
Mercury.
No.
Yeah. Mercury. Well, he's not named after the element Mercury. I mean, he's got the same name as Mercury, as the element Mercury. He's named after the Roman messenger.
Anyway,
he's fast.
think that we can agree that both the names Copper and Mercury, excellent dog names,
yes,
would be a better dog name than Lithium.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Like
sure.
If you've got a dog called Lithium, people might be wondering,
that's fair.
There's some problems going on there.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, so China's got that. I think where we left off before we took a dog leg, so to speak, on the explanation.
Yes.
Was you're saying that China has just imposed more export restrictions?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's America done in response?
So what the United States has done is, it's already been trying to figure out ways around the Chinese system.
Yes.
And Trump is not the first person to try this. But previous efforts, including in Trump's first administration, have really gone nowhere. So far it's involved taking stakes in all kinds of companies that actually are involved in critical minerals, opening up the possibility of new mines in the United States, although, as you say, and this is why there is only really one mine, the Mountain Pass mine on the California-Nevada border, that is dedicated to these things. It is incredibly difficult, costly, and complicated to actually get a new mine up in the United States, especially one that is not going to be commercially viable.
Yeah, you'd be much better off trying to get a mine up in a less developed country.
Yes,
where it'd be much cheaper.
Yes,
which is kind of what they did.
Okay,
we'll get there.
Yeah.
But before we get to the less developed country,
yes,
we should talk about the 100% tariff because that was the first response.
Yes. Yeah. So the first threat was an additional 100% tariff.
Like everything Trump does, there's always a tariff
on Chinese goods.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, as we have discussed many times before, when you start talking about tariffs in those numbers, you're no longer talking about a tariff, you are talking about an embargo.
That's right.
Yeah.
We should read his tweet. It is absolutely unheard of in international trade and a moral disgrace in dealing with other nations, based on the fact that China has taken this unprecedented position and speaking only for the USA and not other nations who are similarly threatened, starting November 1st, 2025 or sooner, depending on any further actions or changes taken by China, the United States of America will impose a tariff of 100% on China over and above any tariff that they are currently paying. Also on November 1st, we will impose export controls on any and all critical software. It is impossible to believe that China would have taken such an action, but they have, and the rest is history. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Drink. The reason I read that out is because I love that Trump finds it unreasonably fine. So he sees unilateral economic action as unreasonable. That's what he says, and he sees it as a moral disgrace.
A moral disgrace, and he's talking about like never before in the history of trade has this happened.
No notes from me.
Ever in the history of human trade.
Yeah.
Now, the more historically minded among you,
those without brain damage will remember. Yes.
Yeah. Not only all the things that Trump has done recently, but let's go back a little bit further.
Yeah.
You think China might be looking at this and going, remember like 150 years ago, You made us buy your opium?
I wasn't even thinking about that, but you're right.
You and other Western powers literally conducted war against us to force us to open our markets to your filthy, filthy opium?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's remarkable hypocrisy. I suppose the question is, was it sustainable hypocrisy? Which is what Maria Bartiromo, Trump's buddy, asked him. She said, is it sustainable? This is what he said.
If you put that 100% tariff on top of what's in place already,
55.
but 157% tariff on
right.
China, can that stand?
No,
What is that going to do to the economy?
It's not sustainable, but that's what the number is.
I hope that puts you at ease. It's not sustainable, but that's what it is.
How many times has he threatened this?
Quite a few. Yeah.
Do you remember I said right at the beginning of Trump's presidency, every time you make a threat, there's a cost associated with that.
Yes, you did say that. That's true.
Especially when you then retreat from that threat.
Yes, you did.
I think China and Russia and quite a lot of other countries have worked this out at this point.
Yeah, I think you're right. So this is, as you say, this has happened before. In April, Trump announced big tariffs in China. China retaliated by implementing rare earth export controls. Trump tacoed. He then reduced the tariff rates back down. China kept its export controls.
Said, actually, this is a good idea.
Yeah, but allowed America to buy them in the short term. Then in June, they agreed to a framework deal where China would relax some of the rare earth export conditions, and Trump would lift some countermeasures against China. Then China only allowed America to buy in the short term again. And now they've lifted the export controls again. They keep on doing this. They extract a bit more from Trump.
Yep.
They back off a few months, and they do it again.
Yes.
And Trump just keeps on biting. Yeah.
And let me stress how much less effort all of this is for China than it is for Trump. How much less disruptive to China's economy putting export controls on rare earths is than Trump putting 100% tariffs on the single biggest source of exports to the United States is.
Well, China's big enough that they only need themselves.
Yeah.
Largely. Yeah, I mean, obviously they're better off with exports.
Yeah,
but
much better off.
Yeah, but they can get by.
At least in the short term.
They've got a big domestic market.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
That is true.
Yeah. So, I mean, this trade war is, as we say, it's following this very predictable pattern. We've just seen the same thing happening for months. And even with the kind of efforts that we're talking about to get around the Chinese system of rare earths, that's a very long-term thing.
Yeah. No.
I haven't seen any estimates of this taking less than 10 years. And it's also not guaranteed at all to succeed because of the kinds of commitments that are involved, because of the inherent risks that are involved in new mining projects. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, if this eventually does succeed, if the United States and its allies do, in the long term, create this alternative system of rare earths, then that could be quite visionary. But in the short term, Trump is trying to win a trade war with China. And this is not going to happen. Yeah.
So does that mean that you are not optimistic about what JP Morgan announced last week?
What did they announce last week?
They announced, JP Morgan Chase announced they're going to invest $1.5 trillion to reduce America's reliance on China. Jamie Dimon said that America's become too reliant on adversarial nations for critical supplies. And so they said they were just going to have this huge fund of just trying to invest one at a time on all the products that America relies on other countries for in the hope of developing them over the next few years domestically. What do you think about that?
If there's a name that I really associate with trust, consistency, follow through, doing the right thing by the American people and not screwing over the government, it's Jamie Dimon.
I'll take that as a no. You're not optimistic on that one.
No.
I'll add one more thing to this, which is also is a short-term issue and is a long-term issue. The short-term issue I think you've described very well. But I would also say that until quite recently, America had some key advantages over China. They owned science and research. They dominated the university sector.
Yes. More on that later in this, Pep.
Yeah. They could recruit talent from anywhere in the world in a way that China just cannot. And they had massively strong alliances that were acted as a multiplier effect, especially Europe and other rich countries as a multiplier effect.
Japan and South Korea.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Trump has systematically, if not intentionally, certainly effectively worked away at every one of those advantages.
Every one of those pillars. As I've said before about the alliance system, which Trump just seems to have looked at this and thought, what is this shit where we help pay for the defense of other countries? Why aren't they paying us?
Yes.
We're the powerful ones. And maybe because it was so obvious, it was never explained to him or his supporters. But the benefit for the United States from the alliance system and in general from the amount of soft power that it exercised around the world was the number of countries and the number of people in those countries who just accepted American leadership of the world and effectively ownership of the world as normal and natural and good. And were prepared to let the US do pretty much whatever it wanted as a result. That, it turns out, is a lot cheaper than coercion.
Yes.
Okay, Trump's view always seems to be is that the cheapest and easiest way of getting someone to do something is just ordering them to do it, and if not, if they don't comply, threatening them.
Yeah, make them hate you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. And I think that there's a lot of misreading that goes on of Machiavelli. Like, people love this one line, like, oh, it's better to be feared than loved. The next part of that line is, if you cannot be both. And
that's an important part.
That's a pretty important qualifier because, the post-war United States was definitely both.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add before we come back to the less developed country?
No.
Okay, we'll come back to less developed country. I'll throw in a few more updates, and then we'll do that. The shutdown update, which I flagged before.
Yep.
Russell Vought's been trying to pass as many partisan cuts as he can. Trump not helping out. A little bit like Besant before. He's not helping out with his rhetoric.
Yep.
Like, for instance, when Russell Vought cut $18 million from the Hudson River Tunnel project in New York, he said it was to ensure the funds were not used for diversity, equity, and inclusion purposes. Now, that's highly unconvincing. But at least he gave it a go, which is more than Trump could do.
Mr. President, you're sitting with New York City. You've talked about the Hudson River Tunnel, the protection project. But you said that the funding was terminated, but, folks in New York have said that it's not terminated. So where does that
Well, as of now, it's terminated, and that's up to me. And as of now, it's terminated, and it's terminated because the Democrats are so foolish what they've done to the country.
So the administration right now is not sending funding?
Right now, there is no funding because it's up to me.
Look, there's something about that plane.
The plane of truth.
It's not Air Force One. It's the Don't Even Try Express.
It's a no-spin zone. Yes. That message there was brought to you by Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. They could not have been happier. I spoke in the last podcast about how there was no real reason for this shutdown to end. This is what I was talking about, Jared.
Yeah.
Because Trump's taken the pain out of the shutdown.
Yes.
By shuffling money around so that they're paying the military, etc. Well, there is some pain starting soon because the feds have stopped paying out SNAP funds.
Right,
food stamps. They pay the states, then the states pass it on. They have now stopped paying the states. So over the next week or two or three, different states at different rates are going to stop paying food stamps to 42 million Americans.
Yep.
That's some pain. The other thing that is starting right now is people receiving news of what next year's healthcare premiums are going to be.
Yep.
We've heard this day was coming. It's now here. We're starting to see tweets of people doing screen caps of their letters that they're getting in the mail. Like, for instance, this was a tweet that went viral. Me and my partner's bronze health insurance plan with Florida Blue is increasing from $511 a month to $1,700 a month next year. Not quite sure how to fit $20,641 a year in health insurance premiums into my budget. There's a lot of that happening. So that's a factor as well. Finally, there's some cute clips doing the rounds as far as, now you got a different story. This is Trump from 2013, talking about the 2013 shutdown. 2013, even before he was a politician.
Right. If there is a shutdown, I think it would be a tremendously negative mark on the President of the United States. He's the one that has to get people together. Right. I'm a deal man. I made hundreds and hundreds of deals and transactions. He never did deals before. How can you expect a man that's not a deal man, that never did a deal, other than, frankly, becoming President of the United States? He never did a deal. How's he going to corral all these people?
So how would you do it now? Now, you're in the Oval Office right now.
I would get everybody together and we'd have a budget. And
they've all gotten together.
Well, that's because they don't have the right leader. You don't have the right leader. This is the President of the United States has to get this done.
Just notice how different he sounds.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, not the most salient point, I know, but that was what I was focused on the whole time.
Yeah. No, he's changed.
Yeah.
He's changed a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, there is no doubt about that. But, obviously there's infinite clips floating around of Democrats and Republicans arguing the opposite of what they currently are arguing, and especially during the 2018 shutdown. But this just creates a potential vector of pressure, which is what the name of the game is here. Is there going to be enough pressure on one side for them to go, okay, I concede? So far, it doesn't look like it's even close.
No.
So I'm just looking for where pressure comes from. One more pressure point. This one's for Republicans rather than Democrats. They're advancing in the Senate legislation this week to pay federal workers.
Yep.
Not to reopen the government, just to pay the federal workers that are working.
Yep.
And Democrats have to decide how they're going to vote on that one. Hakeem Jeffries says he's against it. This is the reason.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. This week, the Senate is expected to vote on legislation that will pay federal employees and U.S. service members who have been working throughout the shutdown. Do you encourage your Democratic colleagues to support this when it comes on the floor?
It's my understanding that that is not a comprehensive bill that actually is designed to reopen the government while at the same time addressing the issues that need to be confronted on behalf of the American people, which include lowering the high cost of living and decisively addressing the Republican health care crisis. So it's not legislation that I support because it appears to be more like a political ploy to pick and choose, giving Donald Trump discretion which employees should be compensated and which employees should not be compensated. All employees should be compensated, and that will happen when we reopen the government.
I don't know if that works for you, Dave.
He lost his way about halfway through that sentence.
Yeah, I wasn't. He does have very long sentences, has to be said. Look, I don't know if that excuse is going to cut it, but that could be the next pressure point. Like if that vote does come up in the Senate.
Yeah.
Especially if it gets up in the Senate. That stuff is really all that's new in the shutdown at the moment. Do you have anything to add about the shutdown or anything I just talked about?
Look, I'm just remembering when Belgium didn't have a government for 18 months.
Yeah.
Back in 2009 or 2010. As you have said before, government shutdown is in some ways a metaphor rather than an actual thing.
Yeah, yes, it is.
Like in no literal sense is the government actually shutting down.
Yep.
Most of the functions of the government are just continuing.
Yep.
And what we're seeing now is what seems to be quite a serious capacity for the government to find ways to continue even things like paying people during the shutdown. Although, SNAP payments not going out is going to be pretty serious. Ballroom renovations still happening while SNAP payments are not getting sent out is going to be a very bad look. But the point is, you could just see this shutdown continuing and the quality of government getting worse and worse as a result. But Americans are already used to a pretty poor quality of government.
That's true.
At this point.
That's the blessing.
And, obviously the people who are going to get hurt most are the poorest and most vulnerable. The United States is not exactly unfamiliar with politics that in the first instance goes after the poorest and most vulnerable in order to make a political point.
Fair call. It's kind of the shutdown related ones. That's one in there. We've spoken before about rural hospitals being under the gun if Medicaid funding is reduced. I saw a very interesting stat about this.
Yep.
Over the past decade and a half, health systems have lost about 20% of pediatric beds, and about 30% of pediatric care units.
Yep.
The reason for that is because kids' healthcare doesn't make money. Why doesn't it make money?
Because kids can't pay because they're lazy and they don't have jobs.
That's true. Kids have a lot of revenue. Kids are much more likely to be on Medicaid and other government subsidy programs which have lower reimbursement rates for doctors.
Right.
And they're lazy bludgers. So why are they more likely to be on government subsidy programs, you might ask? Because politicians don't make exceptions for kids' health care like they do for working age adults' health care. So, for instance, like if people go, could we pay a little bit extra for the kids? They go, sure, fine. So there's always this mass of kids on any subsidy system that they don't want to get rid of.
Yes.
And they don't mind knocking the able-bodied men off. So.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so what that means is over time, paediatric care has increasingly become concentrated in specialty children's hospitals.
Right.
And they are increasingly few and far between because they don't make money, especially in low-income and rural areas. And here is the stat. According to Kaiser and Chief Healthcare Executive, in 2023, non-profit children's hospitals had profit margins of about 2.7% versus 6.4% for all hospitals. So which means that children's healthcare will be the first to go.
Yeah.
If Medicaid is severely compromised because they just won't be able to afford it.
Yep.
It won't happen straight away, but you can expect the next administration to face a real issue with their kids' healthcare.
Yep.
Or I should say it should actually be second to go, actually, because the first to go are the rural hospitals generally.
Yes.
More than 45% of rural hospitals in the United States operate with negative margins.
Yeah.
And make a loss. So that's stats noted for you there. I'll do a little media update on Hegseth.
Okay.
I talked a lot about this in the Jared pod.
Yep.
Thanks to Cyanide on the Discord for coming to the rescue. Peppers make it happen. He or she provided answers to some of my questions.
Okay.
They sent me the September 18 guidelines of the Pentagon Media guidelines.
Okay,
which you won't know what I'm talking about there, Dave.
No.
In brief.
Yep.
There were two sets of guidelines. The media reacted to the first set.
Right.
Hegseth then backtracked. They never acknowledged that.
Okay.
They kept on acting like it was the first set the whole way through, which was interesting. Anyway, so Cyanide sent me the September 18 guidelines.
That's the second one?
That's the first one.
That's the first
set.
one, yep.
And it did indeed have the quote that everyone was citing about not releasing information that hasn't already been run by the Pentagon press office. Cyanide also confirmed the guidelines I showed you on Jared's pod were indeed released on October 6, and they no longer had that quote.
Right.
So we've confirmed that the thing that media was all upset about existed in the September 18 guidelines and did not exist in the October 6 guidelines.
Right.
We've confirmed that now. Furthermore, Cyanide pointed me to the guidelines that existed before any of this.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very short. They were paper napkin short.
Yep.
So that might point to why the press was so upset. Because there were guidelines now and there didn't used to be guidelines. Or at least there were only trivial guidelines before.
Yep.
I still maintain the guidelines that exist now, the October 6 guidelines, basically state clearly what existed beforehand anyway on a customary, traditional, norm-based basis. But, and that is what I'm talking about there, is that leakers of classified info are breaking the law. Yeah, it doesn't need to be written down in the guidelines. Everyone knows that. If you leak classified information, that's breaking the law. Military people leaking non-classified information without permission can still be sacked. That's always been the case. And if you're a journalist who publishes any of that information, nothing happens to you. But the leaker, who's not the journalist, the leaker can go to jail if it's classified, and the leaker, if they're military, can be sacked.
Didn't the October 6th guideline, though, require journalists to sign on to a requirement that they not actively solicit information that hasn't been authorized for public distribution?
Not that I saw.
Okay.
Not that I saw.
That was what I thought was the key thing. Basically, committing journalists in advance not to pursue stories that might be based on leaked sources.
I did not. I don't recall saying. I did look for it. I don't recall saying anything saying that you must promise to not solicit or something like that, or guarantee that you won't, or even that you shouldn't solicit. All I remember is saying, if a military person leaks this, information cannot be released by a military person if it's classified. And in fact, even if it's not classified, they can't release information without asking permission. But it said nothing about what the journalists do.
I can't believe that Fox News and Newsmax journalists actually would have walked over that. That
is the one question I continue to
I think that there probably was something a lot more substantial in those guidelines.
You can have a look for yourself. They're in the homework. I'll put them in the homework again.
Yeah.
Like Cyanide answered every question I had except for that one. I continue to say Fox, I get. Like, they have real journalists.
Yes, yeah.
Newsmax don't have real journalists. I don't understand why Newsmax went along with it.
I don't think that journalists are so sort of precious, as you suggest, that they would resign just because there were guidelines where there were no guidelines before. That's the sort of thing that someone might say about journalists to disparage them. I think there must have been something pretty substantial there.
I'm just telling you, I've read these guidelines a number of times, and you can read them yourself. Don't take my word for it.
Okay.
Read them yourself. See if you can find anything that, and I invite the Peppers. You know what? No one's going to be better at this than the Peppers.
Yeah.
Read them yourself. They're in the homework. See if you can find anything that you think isn't just what you would expect. Because they're very detailed, but they're just what you would expect. And see if you disagree with me. Simon wanted to know: are you going to review Media Watch's segment on the new Pentagon press release? Media Watch did get this story wrong. They quoted this guy here.
The policy would have reporters agree not to publish any information that wasn't authorized, going beyond what's classified or unclassified, anything that's not authorized for them to report on without the Pentagon's permission.
You can see that the date of that was October 15. If the date of that had been before October 6, I would have said that piece was fair enough, but Media Watch should have noted it changed. That piece was after October 6, so the piece was wrong, and they were wrong because they put that was on Monday, so that was out of date. Having said that, I don't blame them for not knowing the guidelines changed back on October 6. It was very poorly reported. I don't blame them at all. I don't expect them to just be perfect and just know everything about the entire world. And I don't want to be petty, especially not after I've accused them of being petty. So I'm not gonna. So I'm rolling with it. I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it. But but yeah, hey, look, maybe they can look at the guidelines too and see if they find anything.
Because I mean, the Pentagon press corps now. So yeah, Epoch Times.
Yeah, have you seen the new ones?
One American News and Gateway Pundit.
Yeah,
Human Events.
Yeah. No, they've just opened up now to the blogosphere.
Yeah.
Who of course have no problems at all signing whatever. Just give us a form, we'll sign it. They got My Pillow there in the Pentagon.
My Pillow.
My Pillow is in the Pentagon. Red States in the Pentagon. Yeah, Gateway Pundit. It's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's the future of the media.
Yeah.
Like the future of the media, we've talked about this before. The future of the media, when publications are weak, is you accept what you're given or someone else will accept it.
Yeah.
That's the future of the media. There's always, no matter how low your standards are, there's always My Pillow right behind you, willing to accept whatever you won't accept.
Yeah.
And
the irony of this is, I think one of these outlets is way more likely to just inadvertently do some catastrophic leak of highly sensitive information.
That's true, actually.
Yeah.
You're right.
Because, there's a lot of professionalism that's been eroded in the Pentagon at the moment. Yeah. Whereas before, the fact that, Jeffrey Goldberg is a good example of this, waiting until after the action that he was seeing planned happened before he reported on it, right? So, in other words, respecting national security imperatives. I'm not saying these guys won't respect national security, but they won't have the kind of judgment that Jeffrey Goldberg had in that situation.
I think it's a great call. You're right. They don't have the experience. They don't have the judgment. They don't have they don't have the knowledge. So they could just accidentally just screw up.
Yeah.
But even leaving that aside, what's the fear factor for them? If you're Jeffrey Goldberg, you're thinking to yourself, I'm the editor of an esteemed masthead. I can't risk the reputation of this masthead and potentially risk the existence of this masthead, depending on the lawsuit.
Yeah.
By playing fast and loose. But if you're there representing My Pillow, you don't give a shit.
That's true.
You might as well go for the scoop.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in 2 weeks' time, you'll have moved across to Gateway Pundit. You won't care.
Yeah.
Even if you're the owner of My Pillow, you won't care. These aren't valuable brands.
No.
So I think that is the other side of it. It's bad for everyone.
Yeah.
When My Pillow becomes the media, it's bad for everyone. Israel update. Last I saw, Hamas had returned 15 dead bodies of hostages, 13 to go. And where we left it with Jared, we left it after Israel and Hamas were attacking each other on the weekend. We weren't really sure what was going on there. They were accusing each other, and that's where we're at the podcast, right? Well, since then, it's become a lot clearer. An Israeli settler bulldozer ran over unexploded ordnance, creating an explosion. Not that Hamas popped up from a tunnel and fired an anti-tank missile, as Netanyahu suggested.
That always seemed like a weird story to me.
And so as a result of that, 20 different areas in Gaza were attacked by Israel, killing 45 people, at least according to Hamas. I don't want to get bogged down on that particular incident because there's going to be many more where that came from.
Yeah.
I want to look at the trends, which are become clearer in the 4 days since I talked to Jared. The trends were that Israel is clearly looking for an excuse to take out Hamas.
Absolutely.
First excuse, bang, let's go.
Netanyahu's cabinet would not have signed that agreement if they didn't believe that Netanyahu would be looking for the first possible excuse to break it.
Totally.
It's that simple.
Smotrich tweeted out, "War!" with an exclamation mark. He was so excited when it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that guy's still in charge, seemingly. Other trend, Hamas shows no interest whatsoever in disarming.
No.
Which is supposedly the gateway to phase 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how we get to phase 2 is not clear.
Yeah.
All right.
We discussed this before. So Hamas returning the hostages, that's giving up a significant piece of leverage.
Yes.
If it had disarmed, that would have been giving up all its leverage.
Yeah.
And we did also suggest we don't think that Hamas really has an interest in that. Yeah. So Hamas probably also wouldn't have signed this if they actually thought that this was going to lead to disarmament.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Third trend, it's America that's keeping this together.
Yes.
Yeah, like that. Like JD Vance is literally over there.
He is literally over there now. Rubio is going to be over there on Thursday.
Yeah.
I do not doubt the commitment of the Trump administration to trying to keep this deal together.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that at all.
And
you can question their motives, but they definitely want to try to keep the deal together.
And JD Vance made a point which you don't hear very often. Clearly they're trying to be as reasonable as possible.
Yeah.
Which is, when we talk about Hamas, you're talking about 40 different cells. It's disjointed. Some of those cells will probably honour the ceasefire. Many of those cells, as we saw some evidence of today, he says, I don't know about that, will not. Before we actually can ensure that Hamas is properly disarmed, that's going to require some of these Gulf Arab states to get forces in there to actually apply some law and order and some security keeping on the ground. The fact they acknowledged that Hamas is not one body.
Yes.
It's a group of people. Like that's true.
Yeah, it is.
Like, and there will be times when like what Hamas was saying, and I'm not necessarily taking them at their word, but what they were saying on the weekend with some moments was they were saying, well, that person who's attacking there, we have no control over that person.
Yes,
we can't even communicate to that person.
Yes.
I believe that.
Yes.
That would be the case. And also, something which no one has said is that there are still militant groups active in Gaza that aren't Hamas.
Yes.
And that aren't party to these agreements.
That is right.
Who could at any time kill anyone. They could kill either Hamas or Israelis.
Yes.
And that starts, if people are looking for an excuse, there's your excuse.
Yes.
So it's very tenuous in that respect.
Yes, yeah. By the way, I just want to clarify something that I said a few minutes back. When I'm talking about Israel's cabinet, I'm talking specifically about Smotrich and Ben-Gvir.
Sorry, I assume that, but it's good to be clear.
The leaders of the hardline resistance. I do not think that they would have signed this without seeing a path to continuation to war.
I suppose my question, which I have asked on Planet America, I don't think I've asked you here, is have we gotten to the point where when you have at least the prospect of potential peace, where the centrists who don't support Netanyahu will be willing to support Netanyahu at least for the next year to take him to the election in return for Smotrich getting the hell out of there. So that like saying, okay, if you actually keep to this peace plan, Bibi, we'll keep you in power while this peace plan is progressing. Is that viable?
That so that he wouldn't actually need.
Yeah, so he wouldn't need the ultra right. Like Lapid, if Lapid thinks to himself, we really want this peace to happen. Like, is it viable for him to say, just bugger off the ultra right guys? I'll look after you. We'll keep you in power as long as you stay to the word along that of that plan.
Look, I don't know enough about the workings of Israeli coalitional politics to know.
Yeah, sure.
Whether that's
I've got no idea
whether that's possible or not.
Yeah.
Yes, if there are any peppers who do have any insights into that, please give them to us.
Absolutely. And meanwhile, Trump is just, I don't know what he's doing here. Let's just have a listen.
We have 59 countries that agreed to the deal. We have a peace in the Middle East for the first time ever. We made a deal with Hamas that, they're going to be very good, they're going to behave, they're going to be nice, and if they're not, we're going to go and we're going to eradicate them if we have to. They'll be eradicated, and they know that. So they went in, and I don't believe it was the leadership, but they had some rebellion in there among themselves, and they killed some people, a lot of people. But this is a violent group. You probably noticed over the last 100 years, this is a very violent group of people. And they got very rambunctious, and they did things that they shouldn't be doing. And if they keep doing it, then we're going to go in and straighten it out, and it'll happen very quickly and pretty violently, unfortunately.
Okay, so that's the peacemaker there, Dave.
Yeah, look, if I were MAGA-minded, I'd be a little bit worried about his constant use of the term, we're going to go in and eradicate them.
He did clarify soon after when he says we, he doesn't mean America.
Right.
But still,
that's a level of identification with the Israeli military that a lot of MAGA would not be very happy with. During this period, I've come up with a new unit of time.
Yes.
Right. This unit of time is an oaf.
Yes.
An oaf is the amount of time it takes for an American newspaper to dutifully churn out an editorial about, well, you got to hand it to Trump this time. He really has brought peace to the Middle East. Yeah, this ceasefire lasted about 3 oafs.
Yeah. The last extra element, which I thought was interesting, I don't know if it's going anywhere. I'd like your comments on it.
Yeah.
Is the Jared Kushner factor. I don't know if you heard about this, but Jared Kushner gave a press conference 2 days ago where he said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to develop the parts of Gaza where Hamas have disarmed. And the parts where Hamas haven't disarmed aren't getting a cent. And we'll start developing it tomorrow. Like the parts which Israel are controlling of Gaza at the moment, where there's no Hamas arms, we'll start developing it tomorrow, and that will give them some incentive to disarm. What do you think about that?
If I were Hamas, I would not believe a word that he says. It's that simple.
Yeah.
You're
probably right.
What you would be asking, what interest do they seriously have in developing Gaza? What benefit do they get out of this? Probably none. It's a useful carrot for them to promise to develop it, but do you expect them to actually do it? Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, let's move on to let's do a Venezuela update. Yeah.
Okay.
I did flag that before. I know you got a lot to say about that. All right. Well, where we left off, Dave, there were drug boats being blown up, and you were wondering if regime change might be on. Now, I said at the time I doubted it because it sounded like a Stephen Miller special to me. Let's just blow up some foreigners. And I should say, almost the first thing I saw as soon as we stopped recording, it's always the way, was this amazing grab. I just have to play you guys just in case you haven't seen it. I mean, it's gotten around, but this is an amazing grab. So let's watch it again.
Every one of those boats is responsible for the death of 25,000 American people and the destruction of families. So when you think of it that way, what we're doing is actually an act of kindness.
Couldn't believe it. Now, look, that is obviously bullshit. There were 80,000 drug overdoses in total last year in America. So by Trump's numbers, every drug overdose comes from 3 boats. Every drug overdose in America combined comes from 3 boats. He's already exceeded. He's already removed the entire quota of drug overdoses next year with the 6 boats he's blown up.
Yes.
He gets that number by dividing the number of kilos of fentanyl that he is asserting was on that boat by the amount of fentanyl that can kill someone. That's how he gets that number, which is exactly how Pam Bondi came up with this number.
As a result of, since you have been in office, President Trump, your DOJ agencies have seized more than 22 million fentanyl pills, 3,400 kilos of fentanyl since you've been your last 100 days, which saved, are you ready for this, media? 258 million lives.
Are you ready for this, media? Imagine how cocky and dumb you have to be to think that's the moment you need to turn to the media and go, you're ready for this? Yeah.
Okay.
So,
if Trump hadn't been there, the population of the United States would have been reduced to 80 million by now. Because as soon as a fentanyl pill appears in the United States, someone just takes it and overdoses on it. And when they're dead, the next person comes along and takes it.
Exactly. Obviously, no one thinks there's actually fentanyl on any of those boats.
No.
They're from Venezuela.
Yes, and the particular strait that they're targeting, that's between Venezuela and Trinidad.
Yes.
Everyone that the New York Times talked to about this. Now, I know that the New York Times is no longer like an authorized Pentagon news source.
Yeah, they're no gateway pundit.
But everybody that they talk to within the DEA and in Venezuela and in Trinidad itself says basically Trinidad is the staging location for cocaine and marijuana going to Europe and Africa.
There you go. Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Yes, yeah. And the kind of people who are on those boats, they're saying, like, yes. I mean, well, there are some parents who are claiming that their children didn't even know what they were doing. The more common story you hear is, like, yes, they knew what they were doing. These are very poor fishermen who are looking to supplement their income in the hope of, of getting out of there. Yeah, but in any case, certainly not fentanyl on those boats.
So given that,
yeah,
the fact that Trump is saying about the fact that they are drug boats, about the fact that the people on the boats are drug dealers, about the fact they're going to America,
yeah,
about the fact they're dangerous and terrorists, all those questions, his answer is just trust me.
Yeah.
And he also says there's fentanyl on those boats, and you know there isn't fentanyl on those boats. Makes it very hard to trust him for all the other questions.
Yes.
So I just note that. Also, even Trump himself says that only 30% of drugs come from the seas. And most of the drugs that come from the seas don't even come from the Caribbean. They come from the Pacific.
Yes.
So as you say, the Caribbean, they tend to go to Europe
yes.
and Africa. It's not even stopping the tiny amount of drugs that do come through the Caribbean, because allow me to quote the New York Times to you here, Dave. Once again, they know My Pillow, but I couldn't get the quote from My Pillow, so you have to just deal with this. With the Trump administration cracking down on the US southern border and flooding the Caribbean with military assets, drug traffickers are finding different ways to push drugs from Colombia, the world's largest cocaine producer, to various markets, experts and law enforcement officials say. Some smugglers are increasingly using cargo vessels in the Caribbean to hide contraband, experts say, which makes it particularly difficult to detect because the drugs are mixed in with legal goods such as produce. In Trinidad and Tobago, the Trump administration's crackdown in the region has led to a sudden surge in the number of illegal air flights from South America, dropping bales of drugs at sea to be picked by larger vessels, according to a senior anti-narcotics official who was not authorized to speak publicly. We are seeing changes in modus operandi, said Patre Rowe, who heads the Firearms and Narcotics Investigation Division of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. More covert means are being used to transship drugs, he said, like hiding drugs in food shipments. This much is clear. The world has never been awash in so much cocaine. The US Coast Guard seized nearly 175,000 kilos, or about 193 tons of cocaine on the high seas in the fiscal year that ended in September, more than double the amount seized the year before. A third of that, about 64 tons, was in the Caribbean. So look, maybe that's all about the change. Now they've blown up a few boats. Doesn't sound like it to me, though.
No, it doesn't sound like it. And look, cocaine can cause fatal overdoses.
About 25,000 a year.
25,000 a year. In fact, one of the most significant escalations.
One boat.
Yeah, in the history of the US drug wars was the death of basketball player Len Bias from powder cocaine in 1986. But all of the government's rhetoric is about fentanyl.
Yes.
They don't mention cocaine.
Yes.
I think there are good reasons why they don't mention cocaine, which is if they started going too heavily into the cocaine angle, there are a lot of people in Washington who could find themselves being very suddenly embarrassed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, even if they did cut off all the drug supply from that part of the world,
yeah,
which is so not, it doesn't even really affect drug prices that much.
No.
Because most of the markups from drug prices come at the end of the supply chain, not the beginning.
Yep.
So if you double the price of drugs at the beginning, it makes almost no difference at the end.
Yes.
So it's just not making much of a difference. I didn't even mention the fact that murdering someone isn't an act of kindness. I just assumed that we all understood that. But anyway, then there was another act of kindness, Dave, when 6 more murders were carried out this week from another boat being blown up. We got some overlay there, Lockie, yeah? This boat here, that one there being blown up there. So that was another act of and then there was another act of kindness after that one, Dave. And this was a 6th boat now. This time a sub was blown up. I'm going to read you the tweet on this one while we watch that game blown up. It was my great honour, this is from Trump, my great honour to destroy a very large drug-carrying submarine that was navigating towards the United States on a well-known narco-trafficking transit route. U.S. intelligence confirmed this vessel was loaded up with mostly fentanyl and other illegal narcotics. There were 4 known narco-terrorists on board the vessel. 2 of the terrorists were killed. At least 25,000 Americans would die if I allowed this submarine to come ashore. The 2 surviving terrorists are being returned to their countries of origin, Ecuador and Colombia, for detention and prosecution. No U.S. forces were harmed in this strike. Under my watch, the United States of America will not tolerate narco-terrorists trafficking illegal drugs by land or by sea. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Okay, so the sub was loaded up with mostly fentanyl, Dave. If the sub was loaded up with mostly fentanyl by Pam Bondi's rules, that's pretty much the world's population is dead.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dead.
Get this, media, 4 billion lives.
That's right. Also, just to be clear, Trump is saying he's killing these people because they're international terrorists.
Yes.
But they failed to kill 2 people on this sub, and so they just
returned them to their home countries.
To send them home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Why can't they do that for all the drug smugglers? Why must
all the terrorists.
Yeah. Why must they kill them all? I don't understand. Let me tell you what I think is going on here. They can't prosecute them in America.
No.
Because they would need to publicly release their evidence. They don't want to do that.
Yes.
He doesn't want to hold them in Gitmo.
No.
Because that would prompt a court case that would have reviewed the legality of this so-called war.
Yep.
So he doesn't want that. What I don't understand is why they didn't just kill them. Just keep coming back over and over again. My guess, and it's only a guess, is that these 2 must have swum away and got to someone else. There must have been witnesses. They must have gotten somewhere. Otherwise, I don't know. Because we know they've done this before. The first boat, they just kept flying back and forth until they killed them all. So why didn't they kill these guys? Because
maybe someone just couldn't bring themselves to do it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Look, let's be grateful for the small mercies, I guess. But then we get to the big news of last week, which was a bit of evidence for your side of the debate. when the New York Times said that Trump signed a classified directive authorizing covert action, allowing the CIA to conduct lethal operations in Venezuela, as well as a range of operations in the Caribbean. Just a little bit of evidence for your side. Not so covert now, has to be said. So, does it mean they're trying to push for regime change? Maybe. Trump was asked about it, and he was as convincing as he usually is.
Curious, why did you authorize the CIA to go into Venezuela? And is there more information you can share about these strikes on the alleged
Well, I can't do that, but
Caribbean?
I authorized for 2 reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy. And as soon as I heard that, I said, a lot of these countries, they're not the only country, but they're the worst abuser. And they've entered they've allowed thousands and thousands of prisoners, mental institution, people from mental institutions, insane asylums, emptied out into the United States. We're bringing them back.
but that's a really bad. And they did it at a level that probably not many countries have done it, but not like Venezuela. They were down and dirty. And the other thing are drugs. We have a lot of drugs coming in from Venezuela, and a lot of the Venezuelan drugs come in through the sea, so you get to see that. But we're going to stop them by land also.
Does the CIA have authority to take out Maduro?
Oh, I don't want to answer a question like that. That's a ridiculous question for me to be given. Not really a ridiculous question, but wouldn't it be a ridiculous question for me to answer?
How you feeling now, Dave?
A few things going on here. Yes. First of all, how many bracelets does Kash Patel need to wear at any given time? Second, I have made this point I don't know how many times before on PEP. The movie Scarface opens with an incident that actually happened, I think it was in 1980, called the Mariel boat lift.
Yes.
Right? So this was when Castro allowed a certain number of dissidents to leave Cuba, and they would be picked up by mainly Cuban Americans who had private boats that they took across that 90-mile stretch. Then when the boat owners got there, they found that they would be forced to take not just the dissidents that they had arranged to take, but all of these other people that Castro didn't want in Cuba, which did include people from the prisons and the insane asylums. I don't know how many times Trump has seen the movie Scarface, but I'm guessing it's more than once. And even if he's watched it with the sort of preferred Trump style of editing, like of cutting out all the bits that aren't violence, I'm sure he's seen that opening many, many times because it appears so often in his claims about immigration. They emptied the prisons. They emptied the insane asylums. Yeah. As far as I'm aware, the Mariel boat lift is the only admittedly spectacular instance of that happening. But this is how Trump sees basically the whole of Latin America in relation to the United States.
Countries don't really have insane asylums.
No, it's a bit of a kind of...
The insane asylums are the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just like we just don't do insane asylums anymore.
Yeah.
At least not en masse,
Yes.
like they did in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's just so anachronistic and just so clearly not based on reality.
Yeah. But anyway, the US is in an undeclared war with Venezuela.
Yeah, I mean, so
it's that simple. And his answer to the whole thing about, you could tell how clearly he was trying to hint the answer. Like, it's not a ridiculous question, but it would be a ridiculous question for me to answer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I also point out?
Yep.
The legal justification for blowing up those boats is that they're non-state invaders.
Yeah, you've made this point before.
And now he's again saying that they were sent by Venezuela. He can't keep his bullshit story straight.
He really
keeps
can't.
on just changing. Also, according to Trump, he's authorizing covert military action against Venezuela now because they allowed a bunch of migrants to cross the border under Biden years ago. Make that make sense to me, Dave. What about Mexico? What about Cuba? What about every other country doing? Like it's also he's trying to stop drugs coming by land.
Yes,
drugs like cocaine. It's just they're all obvious pretext. For what's worth, there are reports of CIA personnel surging into the Caribbean and Central America area, but they're apparently there to collect intelligence at this point in time.
Yes,
not to conduct armed operations at this point in time.
No. But to go back to something that I was saying earlier, Marco Rubio really has managed to push regime change to the to the top of the agenda. And so, Machado, the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, she's not just any pro-democracy activist. She is a particularly pro-American, right-wing pro-democracy activist. That's not to take anything away from her achievement, but to say the fact that when she won that Nobel Peace Prize, she specifically mentioned Trump and the support of the United States for democratization in Venezuela and for the Venezuelan opposition. Like, she clearly, the fact that Marco Rubio nominated her for that prize, like, she clearly has ties to the Trump administration, not covert ties in any way. They openly support her and she openly supports them. So not to take anything away from the Nobel Peace Prize, but this does indicate how clearly regime change has moved to the top of the agenda. And that would come as a big surprise to a lot of MAGA people, right? They're looking at a country with a lot of jungle that starts with the letter V, and they're looking at this gradual escalation of military action, of undeclared war.
And where the fashions appear to be out of the 1970s.
Yeah, like from the MAGA kind of we don't want any more open-ended wars perspective.
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, like not all of the MAGA types are into that. A lot of them were George W. Bush supporters not that long ago.
Yeah, but the people who go, this is what I voted for. This is not what you voted
for.
You did not vote for a war with Venezuela.
Yeah. And, I mean, so far, Trump, it really does appear averse to full-blown military action. Like, I don't doubt that. But he does love the idea of being able to strike countries with no possibility of retaliation.
Yeah.
Like they did with Iran. The problem is, okay, so you can imagine these operations continuing. At some point, something goes wrong and Americans die.
Exactly. There's drift.
Yeah. Now, what happens next? There are a few possibilities. One of the things that people often forget about Ronald Reagan is that when US Marines were killed by a bomb in Lebanon, his response was to get the US out of Lebanon. That could be the reaction from Trump, right? Because so far, Trump hasn't gone to war for credibility, right? That was one of the sort of hallmarks of his first term. But on the other hand, it could activate the kind of Jacksonian response of you hit us, this will not stand. We are going to hit you a lot harder, even if just to teach you a lesson.
Yeah.
And you start doing that, and before long, you're losing more and more Americans, and there's more and more justification being offered for why the United States really needs to be in this country that is posing such a threat to the United States.
Well, we're actually seeing this right now. The mindset you're just describing, we're already seeing like how the war just spreads if you don't have systematic controls over it.
Yeah, yeah.
And the systematic controls you're meant to have is Congress.
Yes.
Right, which you don't have, right? So for example, we heard from a Trinidadian mum at one point in time this week that her son was, who she said was just a fisherman, was murdered in one of those boats. Maybe she's wrong about her son. Maybe he's a drug dealer. Maybe she's not wrong. The Americans have no idea. I don't know. But then we heard from the Colombian president who tweeted out this. US government officials have committed a murder and violated our sovereignty in territorial waters. Fisherman Alejandro Carranza had no ties to the drug trade and his daily activity was fishing. The Colombian boat was adrift and had its distress signal up due to an engine failure. We await explanations of the US government. Now, America could have denied that. But better still, they could have supplied some evidence. That would have been nice. A nice change. But instead, they chose to get butthurt along the lines of what you just said. Oh, you're going to have a go at us, are you? Well, we're going to have a go at you harder. And Trump replied, President Gustavo Petro of Colombia is an illegal drug leader, strongly encouraging the massive production of drugs in big and small fields all over Colombia. It has become the biggest business in Colombia by far, and Petro does nothing to stop it, despite large-scale payments and subsidies from the USA. They're nothing more than a long-term rip-off of America. As of today, these payments or any other form of payment or subsidies will no longer be made to Colombia. The purpose of this drug production is the sale of massive amounts of product into the United States, causing death, destruction, and havoc. Petro, a low-rated and very unpopular leader with a very fresh mouth towards America, better close up
mouth!
Yeah. Better close up these killing fields immediately, or the United States will close them up for him, and it won't be done nicely. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President J. Trump, drink.
See, any other president, I would say those would be very hard comments to back down from or to walk away from. Now, Trump is capable of backing down from anything. If he's got a real peacemaking power, it's that.
Yes, that's true.
But this kind of escalation, it always develops in ways that people don't predict and can't control.
Absolutely. And what I was just going to say is it wasn't just verbal escalation. The next boat that was blown up directly after that tweet was a Colombian boat in Colombian waters.
Yep.
Which seems mighty coincidental to me. It seems to me like Trump is completely unaccountable. And when you accuse him of anything, he escalates by murdering your citizens.
Yes.
That's what it seems like to me, which is exactly what you're talking about. Like how these things just drift and get out of control. And you just have to, I mean, look, people died. They were murders, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's already bad. But what I'm saying is also there could be something unpredictable about it as well, which then leads to the escalation.
What happens when Americans die?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, maybe they won't, but, there's only got to be so many times that you can do this before something goes wrong. Yeah.
And that's where we're at. We're just waiting to see.
Yeah.
In the meantime, people are just dying. But we got to see that's where we're at. And also just, one more thought for Venezuela. Spare a thought for their Christmas. Like Molina did point out to us a few weeks back that they celebrate Christmas from October 1st now. Do you know that?
No.
Maduro has been gradually moving Christmas back further and further to distract people. And now they start on October 1st. So they're in the middle of Christmas time, Dave.
Yeah. Look, lest anyone...
Do they know it's Christmas?
Yeah, lest anyone wonder, the Venezuelan regime is not a good regime. It's a pretty bad one. You probably wouldn't want to live there. It's kleptocratic. It's a petro state.
You especially wouldn't want to live there if you're a reindeer. I mean, it's bloody hot to begin with, but then you're working 3 months a year. It'd be terrible.
Yeah.
Anyway. Oh, yeah. That's the other thing. We didn't even mention Admiral Alvin Halsey, the head of the U.S. Southern Command, leaving, that's a bit of a canary in the coal mine.
That is a bit of a canary in the coal mine.
He hasn't criticised any policies publicly, to be fair, but he has spent 37 years raising himself to the rank of being the guy in charge of all military operations in Central and South America.
Yeah.
And as soon as he got there and began his 3-year term, he immediately resigned.
Yeah.
That seems sus to me.
That's a canary in the coal mine.
Yeah. And then the New York Times says that one current and one former U.S. official, both of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss personnel matters, said that the Admiral Halsey had raised concerns about the mission and the attacks on the alleged drug boats. I find that very easy to believe. Now, admittedly, I haven't asked My Pillow what they have to say about it all, but I find that very easy to believe what New York Times is saying.
Yes.
So, yeah, there's that.
And by the way, don't let anything that I just said about Venezuela be taken as an endorsement of regime change. Something that we really should have learned from the Iraq War is that just harping on about how bad the regime is not a good reason for regime change in the sense of actively trying to make it happen.
I'm glad you clarified that, Dave. I doubt very much that any PEP is running the impression that you were
that I was
advocating
regime change. We need to bring Christmas back to December, damn it.
The thing is, it's still Christmas in Venezuela in December. It's just they just have 3 months of Christmas. Why don't they just make it all year? It's like this. Instead of having daylight savings debates in Venezuela, they have Christmas debates. So let's have Christmas all year. Anyway, why don't you talk to us about Albo versus Trump? Sorry, the less developed country. Why don't you talk to us about that?
Okay. So it's not very often that we talk.
Very good. You did whip that up just now. Well done, Loki.
It's not very often that we talk about Australia on Planet America, but Australia has been at the centre of events in the last... Well, no, not really. Ukraine's been at the centre of events.
I was going to say, when you say Australia's been at the centre of events, I read 280 articles that day, and one of them was about Australia. One. We cracked it for 1
Well,
280th
you
of the
were
news.
obviously not reading the Sydney Morning Herald.
That is true.
Yes. Okay, Australia for about an hour was at the centre of events in Washington. Now, the background to this is that it has taken a long time for this proper meeting between Albanese and Trump to actually happen. And this has been causing a bit of discomfort in Australia because there have been a couple of times when it was going to happen, but it was cancelled because it didn't fit with Trump's schedule because he had to go and deal with Ukraine at one point. At another time, it was just there wasn't going to be enough time. And yet Australians have seen all these leaders of all these other countries have these meetings with Trump in the Oval Office. Sure, they didn't always go very well, but at least they were there, you know. And anyway, so there was a bit of worry about, you know, the fact that it had taken so long. But as it turned out, the timing of this could not have been better for Australia. And that was because it was happening a few days after China had announced its latest and greatest licensing system for rare earths, making it even harder for the United States to get them. And as we have pointed out, Australia is number 4 on the list of the countries with rare earth deposits. Now, at it's 5 point something million, so it's about an eighth of the size of China's deposits. But nonetheless, you don't need a lot of rare earth in every in every component of things that requires them. So Australia is probably one of the United States' potential best bets for developing an alternative supply. So all of the kind of heartache that we'd seen in Australian commentary for the last 8 months about what kind of leverage do we have over the United States, what can we possibly offer in negotiations, suddenly it was very, very clear.
Yep.
And so this substantively was the main thing that came out of that meeting in Washington. It was a joint pledge that each country would spend $1.5 billion on developing critical minerals. The 2 big projects that were announced was one mine and one plant in Australia. So the plant was, let me see if I can remember the name of the mineral involved. I think it was gallium. It's something that apparently at the moment China produces in vast quantities through its aluminium smelters.
Okay.
Yes, so that is something that Australia will be doing. And the other thing is a mine, which I believe is backed by Gina Reinhardt, that will be producing rare earth oxides.
Right.
Okay, so these are going to be 2 pretty important things. Now, with the caveat, neither of these are likely to be runaway commercial successes. For the reasons that that we've mentioned. The commercial viability of these is very questionable, but Australia is getting money from the US for this investment. So this has been widely reported in the Australian media as a win, but the actual money is not the issue. The issue is now Australia actually has a bargaining chip.
Right.
Right. This is Australia has got leverage. Like as Hayley Channer said in an article in The Guardian, the fact that Australia is getting any American money at all out of this is basically just a plus. And Richard Holden, the UNSW economist who was quoted a little bit further down, said, really, in his words, really, we're in a world where countries are acting like countries now, not just like corporations that happen to be in countries. And with countries, it's all about the bargaining chips. And now we've got one, even if there are serious questions about the commercial viability of this mine. Okay, so this was the big substantive thing that came out. The other thing that a lot of Australians were watching for was any mention of AUKUS. Trump seemed very enthusiastic about AUKUS. So for peppers who are not Australian, who might not be familiar with this, because let's face it, very few people outside of Australia are. This is the deal which will eventually see Australia getting American-manufactured nuclear submarines, but will effectively have to be basically cooperated by the United States because they have all of the expertise. And it's still not entirely clear what all of the details of that are going to look like exactly how many submarines there will be or anything like that. But the Australian government is very committed to this, even though there are a lot of doubts about the actual feasibility or desirability of this program. And one of the problems with it is, and I think even some advocates of AUKUS would agree with this has never really been properly debated in Australia, never really been properly explained by the government or properly opened up to public debate. But for those who are very committed to AUKUS, they would have taken heart from the fact that Trump seems very committed to it. However, as has been widely pointed out, Trump would never have been the main threat to AUKUS in the first place. As I keep saying, AUKUS conforms pretty well to Trump's view of the world and what alliances should be like, which is you pay us for protection. That's pretty simple. Trump isn't going to be the issue. The issue is going to be future presidents and Congress when they're confronted with problems around America's own lack of submarines.
But now we've got leverage.
Can
I ask, with this leverage?
Yes.
Gallium is one of 17 rare earth metals?
Mm-hmm.
Is how much leverage is only having one of the rare earths? If Australia wants to become the non-China centre of rare earths, we need a few more, don't we?
That would be a question better directed to someone who knows what they're talking about.
Fair enough. Okay, so we got leverage.
Yes.
So we should be happy then.
Well, that was the big, the big takeaway from. Well, I mean, that was the big substantial takeaway.
Sure. Okay, other than Rudd being embarrassed from a moment.
Yeah. Look, let's just talk about that for a minute. So, a Sky News journalist, Andrew Clennell, made sure that he got a question in about this Australian ambassador who tweeted derogatory things about Trump years ago.
Yeah.
And Trump gave a response which indicated he didn't seem to realise that ambassador was in the room and was Kevin Rudd. And when Rudd indicated his presence and said, that was before I took on this role, Trump came out with this line, well, I don't like you either and I never will, which everyone in the room chose to interpret as a joke.
Yeah.
But according to Australian reporters who were in the room who examined all this absolutely forensically, they said it was hard to tell whether it was a joke or not. Yeah. But everyone just chose to interpret it as one. Michael Koziol from the Sydney Morning Herald, who I think is a former student of mine, he later reported that Rudd and Trump had gestured to Rudd afterwards and said, were you the one who tweeted those things? And they had a little chat, and there's this indication that everything was forgiven afterwards. And look, as the point has been made many times, if Trump really did hold these you're dead to me grudges with everybody who'd ever tweeted something derogatory about him, there would be nobody to work with.
J.D. Vance called him Hitler.
Exactly. This was all during the same period that was going on. Nonetheless, this led to people in the Australian federal opposition calling for Rudd to be removed as ambassador. Although some others in the opposition, like Jane Hume, seem to think that was a ridiculous idea. You will say with the Australian ambassadorial corps, so the previous two ambassadors, Arthur Sinodinos, who was a coalition minister, and Joe Hockey, who's a coalition treasurer, they've been very supportive of Rudd. And it really does seem like if you hold that position, you see it as your responsibility to be very supportive to anybody else who holds that position. And despite coming from the other side of politics, they've been fairly full of praise for Rudd. I will also say about Rudd that people talk a lot about his personality defects, but
they do.
Just looking, looking at him as a former prime minister. So bearing in mind, he first lost the leadership in 2010, then came back very briefly in 2013, right? So that's really his prime ministerial career. You look at what he's done since then. I mean, he went and did a PhD and wrote this book about Xi Jinping, about Xi Jinping's ideology. I will not vouch for this book because I have not read this book, but I know that this book has actually been quite influential in terms of shaping the way that people think about Xi Jinping. Okay, as I am not vouching for this book, I have not read it, and now for the last few years, he's been in this not particularly easy time to be the ambassador, Australia's ambassador to the United States. What I'm saying is, as a post-prime minister, he has engaged pretty significantly with the two most significant world leaders of the last decade, Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. That is a pretty significant post-prime ministership. The fact that he has, that he's managed to do that. I'm not vouching for, for anything else, but that's pretty significant. You look at other former Australian prime ministers. Julia Gillard has had a pretty quiet life away from the public, which I absolutely respect. I respect that a lot more than another prime minister who spent the last 10 years driving his party off a cliff. Malcolm Turnbull has been, I think he's been pretty significant sort of now that he's out of the system. He's set himself up as this very significant oppositional voice on AUKUS in Australia because he feels that no one else is really doing the job of opposition significantly. But Rudd is someone who actually chose to stay within the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's done a pretty significant job.
Good on him.
Yeah.
Good kid.
Chaz, can I ask you a question?
Yes, Lucky.
I've just done some counting on a quick Google, and I found over 100 stories on Australian news outlets about the Rudd thing. Of your 1 out of 280 articles, did it mention Rudd?
No. Not a single mention. The article was entirely about rare earths.
What rarer earth is there than Kevin Rudd?
So the first things I saw in the American media were about Rudd. Yeah.
Wow.
Trump
not what I read.
Yeah, Trump also called Michael Koziol I can't remember if it was a nasty guy or a very nasty guy for attempting to ask a second question.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, and accused Latika Burke of not knowing anything about the Ukraine war. So there you go. He's engaged with Australian journalism.
We got a couple of things here. I'm going to do my short one.
Mm-hmm.
That'll take us maybe 10 minutes, and then I'll leave you 20 to do whichever topic you want to do.
Okay.
My short one is Supreme Court Voting Rights Act.
Right. Yes, this is important.
Yes. Okay.
So this is Calais versus Louisiana.
That's the one.
Mm-hmm.
So this is last week. The Supreme Court heard arguments on that, or maybe it was a week before now. I want to go through just quickly. I'm not going to speak so much about the law here because honestly, the fix is in. Like they've decided the case.
Yep.
All of them, all the Conservatives, all the 6 of them have different views of why they've decided the case.
Mm-hmm.
They'll pick out of a hat one of them, and that will become the majority. We don't know, but it's just so obvious what the result is going to be. So let's just talk about the result.
Okay.
The background is the Voting Rights Act was signed in 1965, amended in 1982, and as amended, it bans any state election law that results in a denial or abridgment of the right of any US citizen to vote on account of race or colour, which I think most people would agree with. I think pretty much everyone would agree with that, to be honest. You shouldn't be discriminated against in elections because of your race. The question is, what does that mean?
Right.
That's where the rubber hits the road, right? In Thornburg versus Gingles, which is 1986, the court held that in certain circumstances, what this means is the court may need to interfere with the way states draw their electoral maps. And what those circumstances are is, 1, if a state is residentially segregated by race, which many southern states are.
Yep.
2, if a state's voters are racially polarised, meaning that voters of one race tend to vote for one party and voters of another race tend to vote for another party.
Yep.
Which is also true in a lot of America, especially the South.
Yep.
Is there is there a history of discrimination in the state? There definitely is in the South.
Mm-hmm.
Under those circumstances, the court held in 1986 that whichever racial group is in the majority could use its dominance of the state legislature to draw electoral district maps that cut the other racial group out of representation entirely.
Mm.
And so even if there's 30 or 40% of the state which is black, there's no way any black politicians are ever going to be elected in those states.
Yes.
And so for that reason, it's effectively discriminating against black people who would want to vote for those black politicians because it's a racially polarized state.
Yes.
Right? And that would violate the Voting Rights Act. That is the logic. Because if you don't understand the logic, it doesn't make any sense. Because the first thing people go is, hang on, you're racially gerrymandering, that's racist. That's what Supreme Court's saying.
Yes.
But that is the actual logic behind it,
Yes.
right? Okay. And so in those circumstances, the court might have to require maps that give proportional representation essentially to minority groups.
Yes.
And the way they do that is by insisting on racial gerrymandering so that a percentage of the House members from that state reflect the population mix in that state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
In 2013, a lot of the protections of the Voting Rights Act were stripped out of it by John Roberts in the Shelby County case. But this protection was left in until now. Louisiana has 6 seats and a black population that is 30% of the state. So by logic, they should have 2 black members proportionally. Louisiana's Republican legislature just drew a map with only 1 majority-minority seat, not 2.
Yep.
And it's incredibly obvious, as I said, that all 6 Republican-appointed judges want to get rid of this provision. In fact, John Roberts, as a young lawyer in 1982, tried to get Reagan to veto the amended legislation before it was even passed. He's had this in the gun for 40 years.
Yeah.
Right? All 6 judges, as I said, have different reasons, but at heart there is one basic reason, which I think Alito expressed repeatedly. He may be the person who writes the majority ruling in the end.
Yep.
And that is political gerrymandering is allowed according to the Supreme Court. So what's wrong with Louisiana gerrymandering their electorates to maximize Republican representation? Ignore race. Nothing to do with race, just political gerrymandering, which is allowed, believe it or not, under the Supreme Court. Isn't it kind of racist to intentionally, racially gerrymander a seat? He asks. And if Section 2 requires states to consider race when drawing maps, isn't Section 2 by definition unconstitutional? Under the Equal Protection Clause, the 14th Amendment, it says everyone's got to be treated the same way. This is Alito making that exact argument to the NAACP lawyer.
Isn't seeking partisan advantage also an objective that a legislature may legitimately seek?
Not if it comes at the cost of the equal protection principle and the 15th Amendment's prohibition on race discrimination in voting. It is not.
Well, if the objective is simply to maximize the number of representatives of a particular party, that's seeking a partisan advantage. It is not seeking a racial advantage. Isn't that right?
Well, if race is used as a means to seek the partisan advantage, then that is unconstitutional.
Oh, sure.
There's no part of...
If race is used as a proxy for partisan affiliation.
So Alito is saying essentially they're not being racist, they're being partisan. Which might be true.
But he did just admit that if race is used as a proxy...
Yes, that's right.
...for partisan affiliation...
Yeah.
Which seems to be something that is probably happening here.
Well, this is where we get to the NACP's argument. They say, no, it looks like it's been partisan. Actually, they're being racist. And the proof of this, they say, is that white Democrats in the South don't vote for black candidates either. This is the NAACP lawyer making that exact argument.
That's right. And in the state of Louisiana, that analysis was conducted in the Nairn case. And it was clear that regardless of party, white Democrats were not voting for black candidates, whether they were Democrats or not. And we know that there is such a significant chasm between how black and white voters vote in Louisiana that there's no question that even if there is some correlation between race and party, that race is the driving factor.
She's saying if you gerrymandered so that you had a majority of white Democrats and they had a white Republican and a black Democrat to vote for, they'd vote for the white Republican. That's what she's saying. She said that not in that grab, but later, she said that all but 16% of white voters in Louisiana do not vote for black candidates, according to their research. So you have to draw majority-minority districts, regardless of party, just to make sure black people even have a chance of winning an election in the South. Do you think that's true?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything about that, or should we just keep on going?
No, okay. Keep on going.
Okay. I don't know much about the ins and outs of the South. I read them from here, so I'm not entirely sure. What I would say is that there are definitely black Republicans out there. Like out in America, there are black Republicans. One of them is running for governor of Virginia, but that's not the South, even though it used to be. It's not anymore.
There's also going to be a black Republican running for governor of Florida.
That's also not the South.
You know, well, what they say about Florida is the further north you get, the more south you get.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. But yeah, that sounds ridiculous saying Florida's not in the South. It's the most South. But
it's different.
Yeah, but when we're talking about invert commas the South, we're talking about
in V.O. Key's classic study of Southern politics in State and Nation, written in 1949. The chapter about Florida is titled "Florida is Different."
Yes.
Always has been. Also, that book, the chapter about Louisiana, begins with the title, "Louisiana has more elected officials who are or should be in prison than any other state in America."
I can believe that.
Yeah.
So anyway, look, I don't know the answer to this question. You can decide for yourself. But let me just say, if the NAACP is right about how racist the South is, then I think their legal logic and moral logic is both sound.
Yes.
It's very logical.
Yep.
If they are right.
Yes.
About that's the question. The question is, are they right about just how racist the South is? I don't know what I think about that. I just don't know.
Yep.
If they're not right, then I would say the racially gerrymandered districts are not fair. But it's just a question of are they right or not. Okay, if we look at these districts, which is how they exist right now, you can see that the racially gerrymandered districts, they are very, very, very gerrymandered.
Yes.
So it's a question of whether that needs to happen or not for there to be for it to be a fair election according to race. All right. So now we're getting to the practical. Let's say this happens.
Yep.
And they get rid of this rule. So there's no more racial gerrymandering. Let's talk about what happens then. There are 19 to 24 racially gerrymandered seats in the South, depending on your definition of what's racially gerrymandered and what's not, because of this rule. Does that mean Democrats basically never win the House again? Because that's what people are talking about, potentially. Because that's right now, that's 19 to 24 Democratic seats.
Yes.
You remove 20 seats of Democrats and are like adding to the 5 or 6 they're about to lose for redistricting, which we've talked about ad nauseum.
Yeah.
That's very hard to come back from. That's a big wave. Sometimes you get 40 seat waves.
It's not impossible, but
but it's like once a decade type scenario.
Yeah.
You'll get 2 years of every decade. And the truth is that this is what everyone's talking about. Like, I don't know what the race situation is in the South, but in the rest of America, they're more concerned about partisanship than racism.
Yes.
And so they're not talking about black people, they're talking about Democrats.
Yes.
They're going, Democrats never going to win again. Which ironically backs up Alito, doesn't it? He says it's just all about the party. Yeah. Okay, so first of all, do you want to express your view? Is this the end of, if this happens, like it looks like it's going to, is that the end of a fair election in the House?
I mean, my first thought is not about the US House of Representatives. It's about state houses.
Okay.
There are, I don't know exactly what effect this will have in terms of state laws around and state constitutions around gerrymandering. But my thought is there are a lot of state houses in the South where there are black representatives who would also be jeopardised by, by this. And these are in places where Democrats are never going to win majorities, but where it's very important to have at least some black representation in states which have the highest number of African Americans proportionally in the country. My biggest, I wasn't even thinking about the national implications.
Really? Oh man, people have been thinking about them.
I know. What I was thinking about is what is going to happen in state houses.
Yeah.
In the South, if people start using this across the country to start dismantling state houses that have racial gerrymanders that at least ensure some black representation.
But there are so many. I mean, when we talk about the South, there are so many black people there, like 35%, 40% of the state, that you just can't gerrymander black people away completely.
Not completely, but there would be ways of potentially of significantly reducing black representation.
Because these are gerrymandered when you're talking about 5 seats or 6 seats. When you're talking about 200 seats, it's a lot harder.
It'd still be there. I think you could still probably significantly reduce black representation. So that was actually the first thing that came to mind. But as I said, I don't know how this would then interact with laws that exist at the state level. Anyway. Yeah, so in terms of the national level implications, like this could decimate the Congressional Black Caucus.
I am going to dispute that.
You are?
I am. I am, and the reason why?
Yeah.
I've got some graphs to back me up.
Okay.
I know why you say that.
Yes.
But what I think you don't realise is how many members of the Congressional Black Caucus are not elected anymore from majority-minority districts.
Oh, okay. No.
They used to be.
Yes.
If this had been 20 years ago, it sure as hell would have.
Yep.
But this ain't 20 years ago.
Okay. I'm ready to be corrected.
Let's go through. All right. Well, first of all, I should just say there are 61 black members and 56 Hispanic members in the current House. Okay? Let's have a look how black representation in particular has been increasing over the years. 1990 was the critical year when they started to do the majority-minority districts. So you can see the big jump around 1991 on the graph there. But you can see that basically from 1991 through to about 2017, things were staying pretty stable.
Yep.
And then they sort of jumped up in the last 10 years or so. And we're gone from what, 45, or was it, I'd say 40 House reps to 40 black House reps to 60 black House reps in the last 15 years.
Yep.
So they're the general numbers. Yeah. But let's look at the majority-minority numbers. As you can see, this is the percent. This graph is the percentage of black caucus members, or black House members from majority-minority districts. As you can see, if this was back in the 70s and 80s, you'd be talking the majority of them were from majority-minority districts. But in the last, in
2013, the majority of them were from...
Yeah.
In 2017, 50% of them were from majority-minority
But
districts.
look now, it's 20%.
Yeah. Okay, that's a very significant drop in the last decade.
It's falling rapidly at the moment.
Yeah.
And if we break it up, there is actually one group that could be affected. It's black men. Because if we break it up by sex, you can see that black men, while black men are also dropping through the floor as well, they still are at about 30% black men from majority minority districts, whereas black women are only about 10% from majority minority districts.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would decimate the black. There'd be less of them.
Yeah.
There'd be less of them, but like the numbers that I've seen pandied around is that you'll lose about a quarter of them, a fifth to a quarter, which is like, hey, that's not nothing.
Yeah.
But you're talking about the black caucus dropping from 60 to maybe just below 50, 45 to 50, which is not nothing, but at the same time, it's not.
Yeah, I was expecting more.
Yeah. So there is that. Also, we've got to say, it's not like those 19 to 24 districts are suddenly going to become Republican. and therefore become white.
Yes.
You can't gerrymander every single district because the more you spread out your opponent's voters, the less safe your seats become.
Yes.
The prognosticators that I've seen have estimated Republicans will likely win 9 to 12 of those 19 to 24 seats. Still a lot of seats.
That is a lot of seats.
We're talking a 4.4 to 6.2 point advantage to Republicans there.
Yes.
Which is, once again, that's nothing on a wave, but that's a pretty sizable victory to overcome that.
That is, yeah.
Thirdly, this would free Democrats up as well as Republicans. And that's something people don't consider because blue states also racially gerrymander.
Yes.
Right? And when they racially gerrymander, it often hurts Democrats. New York, for instance.
Yes, because it effectively packs a lot of Democrats into one district.
Yes.
Yes.
New York, for instance, has 19 Democrats and 7 Republicans. They could spread those Democrats out much more efficiently if they weren't racially gerrymandering. And so New York conceivably could easily gerrymander 5 more seats to the Democrats.
Yeah.
Just like once they've got to get rid of their fair commission.
Yeah.
but mathematically they can.
Yes.
Like once you get rid of gerrymandering, racial gerrymandering. So we don't know where this would end up.
No.
It's likely Republicans will probably get a minor advantage out of it at least.
Yeah.
And there's only so many minor advantages you can add because we've added a few minor advantages to Republicans this year so far with redistricting before it becomes a major advantage.
Yes.
But the whole, we're about to lose 20 seats, I don't think that's the case.
No, that's,
but what we do know is that Congress would be horrible if this happened.
Yeah.
Because elections would become a farce for the entire country.
Yes.
Every seat would be gerrymandered.
Yeah.
Because what would happen is the Democrats would immediately lose the attempts to have fair commissions.
Yes.
Everyone would gerrymander the hell out of every state as much as they possibly could. The racial gerrymanders at least compromise the partisan gerrymanders a bit. And then you have full partisan gerrymandering. There'd be like 10 swing seats in the entire country.
Yeah.
It would just be a shocker. Right? So, and everyone would become much more partisan and there'd be much more gridlock. It would suck.
Yeah.
And we should also say, whatever happens is not happening for this election unless the Supreme Court wants it to happen for this election, unless they want it to create absolute chaos for this election, because really they should return their verdict in like May or June next year.
Yep.
Way too late then.
Yes.
If they want to, though, they could return their verdict tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or more realistically by January, and then they can have chaos with the redrawn lines at last second in this election. I don't think they'll do that. That's not really their style. But this is more an issue for the next election after that.
Yep.
And so on. So they're kind of my thoughts about where this is going. And just one more thing: if this is the end of democracy, it's the Supreme Court's fault. And I don't just mean because of this case. I mean, the problem here is not getting rid of racial gerrymandering, unless America is as racist as the NAACP thing is. The problem is gerrymandering, which the Supreme Court should have banned a long time ago.
Yeah.
And the fact that they allowed it to happen has set up this situation.
Yes.
Like, so if this does destroy democracy, this isn't what destroyed democracy. It's the last one that destroyed democracy.
Yeah.
That made gerrymandering just part of the election system.
Yes.
And this is just the last straw on the camel's back. This camel's been in traction for the last 2 years.
That's what I was thinking of when Alito's saying, the Supreme Court says it's okay to gerrymander politically. It's like, that was you.
Yeah.
You said it's okay. And, I'm sure that when he was a part of that decision, which was Hooch versus Common Cause,
well done.
I'm sure that he probably at some point thought, wonder if racial gerrymandering is going to come up. I don't think this is happening in a vacuum.
No. I don't. I agree.
Yes.
Do you have anything else to say about this topic?
Not about this topic, but I do have one more thing to say about the Supreme Court.
Please.
I had an article in The Conversation yesterday, which we will put in the homework, which is about the fact that oral arguments are beginning in November over the legality of Trump's tariffs. Now, we have talked about this a lot on PEP, and I won't revisit that at a great length now. But we will definitely come back to that in November when we actually hear the oral arguments. My view is that the administration's legal argument for these tariffs is very, very weak.
I agree.
It is so incredibly weak that most of the time you hear them not talking about the law at all, instead talking about the catastrophic consequences of what would happen if these tariffs were struck down.
When you don't have the law, you bang the table.
That's right. Although Jamison Greer has promised that even if they are struck down, they'll find other means to have tariffs that are just as effective.
I believe him on that.
Yes. But anyway, as we have discussed before, the importance of, as important as tariffs are as an issue, the importance of this case is not even about the tariffs. It's, is the Supreme Court going to impose any limits at all on presidential power when the president declares emergencies? Very important cases coming up. As I said in this conversation article, I think that the tariffs one is particularly important because so far, when the Supreme Court has shown any inclination to impose restraints at all, it's where Trump is interfering with economic orthodoxy. So if they're not going to impose them here, that's not a good sign. But we don't know. It's hard to say which way this one will go.
Now, I took up most of our time there.
Yes, yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's why I wanted to get this plug in before the end. That's okay. Next week, we will try to get to the Compact for Academic Excellence.
I'll say that.
Which was offered to 9 universities. So far, 7 have said no.
Bill and I will not be speaking about that.
Yeah, 2 have not. They're keeping their powder dry, so maybe by next week we'll be up to 9 out of 9, or maybe there will be some universities accepting that. We also didn't get to Ukraine this week. Now, that is a very rapidly unfolding situation. There has been this massive pendulum swing back and forth. Trump, very emboldened by the Gaza ceasefire, decided that he wanted to have a sit down with Putin in Budapest, which led to some of the finest interactions ever seen between Carolyn Leavitt and the press. But that has since been cancelled because Trump has decided that that Putin isn't serious about talks. But as we say, that is a rapidly unfolding situation. As of today, Trump has imposed tariffs on Rosneft and Lukoil, Russia's 2 biggest petroleum companies. That's the first time he's actually imposed new tariffs on Russia since he took office. But it's always very difficult to see in this space what direction Trump is actually going in because the direction changes so often. So this issue will still be around next week.
Excellent. Well, I'll say that as well.
Okay.
Until then, Dave.
Until then.
You stay peppy.
You stay peppy too.
I'll see you guys after the White Flash. Welcome to the other side of the White Flash. This is Chaz Unleashed with Lucky.
Hi, Chaz. Hello, Peppers. Hope you're well.
They are a lot better now they can see you, Lucky. And your smiley face.
Thank you. Flattering.
Are you going to tell them, by the way, about why they're not going to see your smiley face much more?
Oh,
this is your last show.
We got the Monday special.
We
now.
do. We have Bill on Monday, but other than that,
I'll say hi and I'll say okay. I'll tell them.
Yeah.
I'm going on a research trip to the US for most of November, and I leave on Halloween.
And importantly,
I'm researching American beer.
You're no, Lucky. We've studied this. You are researching how much you love MAGA.
I am researching how much I love MAGA, which it's hard to put a limit on, frankly.
You could not love MAGA more.
I could. It's my love for MAGA is on par with how much I hate the Democrats for this shutdown.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
They are trying to do this because they are trying to get more illegal immigrants in or something.
They are, and something about illegal healthcare.
Yeah, and Vance has got a lovely beard, and look, that will probably do. That will probably get you past the airport.
I'm in.
Okay,
now.
Excellent. All right, now Let's talk about that. I was trying to think of what I can put in here that wouldn't be useful doing with Bill on Monday, and I'm trying to come up with the most legally technical stuff, which Bill would be thoroughly bored by. And I think I got a doozy for you here, Lucky.
Okay.
How have I sold this?
I'm in. I'm ready. This is my last hurrah.
I want to talk about James Comey.
Okay.
Now that might not sound legally technical, but just wait. All right. So
the techniques sound like there's no technique in the indictment.
No,
So.
well, that's exactly where we're going. I should just say, we're going to talk about retribution generally. I'm not going to talk about Letitia James, not just now, but for a while, because I think while her case does look super dodgy, I think there's some missing information from the public domain, to be honest. I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's really quite boring. But I feel like our commentary, especially my commentary, is particularly poorly informed. More poorly informed than it usually is. So that's just pretty poorly informed. I don't want to bore you with it, but I think it's a waste of your time, essentially, for me to talk about Letitia James right now. I'm pretty sure that indictment's going nowhere, but I think that there's missing information. So let's just leave Letitia James. James Comey, I'm much more confident on. I think I've got a handle on this one. Recall, Comey was indicted for supposedly lying under oath about telling someone to leak FBI information. Now, Comey's defense, they've made his first submission. This week they made the submission to have his charges dismissed without a trial.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be another submission soon. There's two of them. These are the main arguments that we know of to date. There are four of them. One, that there has been outrageous prosecutorial misconduct, referring to Trump's behaviour there, suggesting his behaviour has been extreme and biased enough to actually dismiss the charges. Two, the indictment is manifestly insufficient.
Mm-hmm.
Three, he can't be charged with false statements because he was telling the truth. Four, Halligan, the flack who Trump has appointed as U.S. attorney to prosecute him, was a legally appointed U.S. attorney. And so her activities are all null and void, and therefore the charges should be dismissed.
Sure. Okay.
They're the four. Let's go through them one by one. Selective prosecution. Comey is arguing that, quote, Comey would not have been prosecuted but for President Trump's animus. Now, first of all, the first thing you need to establish is that Trump has animus.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a hard thing to establish. I feel
like we can go through Truth Social and find a bit of that.
Yes, that's what they're going to do. It's going to be a cavalcade of Truth Social. I feel like there has never been a case of animus more proven in history than the case of the Trump and Comey. So, yeah, they'll be able to prove that. I mean, he's been bitching about Comey for 8 years, right? Often telling him he belongs in jail. It's a pretty clear-cut case. He literally has called Comey evil and corrupt, literally. Having said that, normally that wouldn't prove anything, Lockie. You might go, hey, well, isn't that enough? No, that's not, because Trump can have a personal opinion. He can hate Comey. Sure. And that doesn't mean he's leaning on the prosecutor. The prosecutor can then independently prosecute, right? Obviously, that's not the case here because we know that Trump was pressuring the DOJ to make the indictment because we've seen the tweet.
Again, see, Truth Social.
Exactly. The accidental tweet that he meant to send to Pam Bondi directly.
The DM, yeah.
The DM. This is the one where he beseeched her to indict Comey. It started with, Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially same old stories last time, all talk, no action, nothing's been done. What about Comey, Adam Shifty Schiff, Letitia? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing's going to be done. That's how it started. And it ended with, we can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. We also know that as soon as the U.S. attorney decided not to prosecute Comey, well, Trump fired him straight away and replaced him with a clearly unqualified lackey who has never even prosecuted a criminal case in her life. We also know that Trump has tried to get Comey before. In his first term, he tried to set the IRS on him. He's so comical, this guy. John Kelly intervened and stopped him. But yeah, so he's got a track record of trying to get Comey. The malice is real and very provable. Maybe, though, there's still more you got to prove. Maybe, though, the charges are reasonable anyway. They could, you could have malice against someone who has broken the law, and they deserve to be charged.
Against them. Yeah,
totally. Well, we know that the DOJ in Trump's first term, they didn't think the charges were reasonable. They elected to not prosecute. Neither did Inspector General Michael Horowitz, who stayed the same detail. Neither did Special Counsel Durham, all of whom were appointed to get Comey and none of whom wanted to. Neither did US Attorney Siebert, the one who just got sacked, or his staff, for that matter. Neither did Attorney General Bondi, the biggest hack on earth. Even she didn't think that charges were reasonable. Neither did Assistant U.S. Attorney Todd Blanche, who is literally Trump's lawyer.
Wow.
Not even he thought the charges were reasonable. In fact, no one thought the charges were reasonable apart from Trump's appointed Flack, who literally had no idea what she was talking about. That is pretty good evidence that they didn't have a case. But there is one more thing that they need to prove above that. And this is the toughest bit when it comes to selective prosecutions. This is what makes selective prosecution defenses fail all the time.
Okay.
They need to prove that Trump would have treated someone he didn't hate differently.
Okay, yeah.
Because maybe Trump just likes to prosecute everyone.
Yeah.
The question is not whether it's a dodgy prosecution. The question is it a selective prosecution? So they need to prove that. That's hard. In their first submission, they have argued that in Trump's first administration, there were at least 4 officials who clearly lied under oath.
Sure, yeah.
And were not prosecuted. They cite Attorney General Jeff Sessions, EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt, Health Secretary Tom Price, and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. I won't go into details about how they lied, but they make the case. It goes forever. I don't want to waste your time.
Certainly longer than the indictment.
A lot longer than the indictment, which if you've forgotten this, was slightly more than 1 page. And that was double spaced. They're arguing that's a double standard. He didn't prosecute his other officials. Why is he prosecuting me?
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I find that a bit weak. I think it would not take much for the prosecution to say, look, this person X has been prosecuted with false statements. There you go. We prosecute other people. I might be wrong. The judge might find it convincing.
But it does make it a harder case. Yeah, sure.
That does make it a harder case to dismiss on these grounds. There are other grounds. And I should say, if they do get this dismissed for selective prosecution, that's great news for Letitia James, even though I'm not going to talk about her, because James Comey's going first. He's got the best lawyer going around in Patrick Fitzgerald. He's a good lawyer. And he's got the most obvious case of selective prosecution in terms of the tweets, right? And the track record. Like he's got 8 years of track record. Letitia James only has 2 or 3, right? So if he can make his case for selective prosecution, then Letitia James might be able to piggyback off that decision when it's her turn. Anyway, okay, the second item. The indictment is manifestly insufficient. There are a few parts to this. Firstly, there is, as we've established, no information in that indictment for defense to respond to. That's a problem. It says nothing. It's just over a page, says nothing. Under the Sixth Amendment, the accused must, quote, be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation. Also, Rule 7C(1) in the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure says, quote, the indictment must be a plain, concise, and definite statement of the essential facts constituting the offence charged. That is simply not the case with this indictment. In fact, as I just told you before, until October 20 is when we found out who person 3 was.
Wow.
Until then, we had no idea. So that's 4 days ago. The person 3 we're referring to with person 3 is the person that Comey supposedly told to leak secret information and then lied about. It's Dan Richman, his friend from uni.
Cool, and that was the one that we thought it was.
We thought it was either Andy McCabe, his deputy, or Dan Richman.
Okay.
Yeah, they were the 2 most likely options. And yeah, it was Dan Richman. But here's the thing. It gets a lot worse than just that vagary. I mean, that vagary is a problem, but it gets a lot worse than that. In fact, it gets a lot worse in a lot of ways. We'll go the first way. Let's read the indictment again. And this is not the entire indictment, but it's damn close. James Comey did willfully and knowingly make a materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statement in a matter within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the government of the United States. So that's testifying to Congress. By falsely stating to a U.S. Senator, that's Ted Cruz, during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing that he, James Comey, had not authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports regarding an FBI investigation concerning Person 1. We've also learnt Person 1 is Hillary Clinton. Is that what James Comey did, what they just accused him of? Let's go to the tape.
In this committee, Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation? You responded under oath, quote, never. He then asked you, quote, have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration? You responded again under oath, no. Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Now, what Mr. McCabe is saying and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
Okay, so actually he wasn't asked about an FBI investigation concerning Person 1, as the indictment says. What he was asked about was...
in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration.
He was asked about the Trump investigation or Clinton administration. The Clinton administration was Bill Clinton's administration in the 1990s. It wasn't the Clinton investigation, which was Hillary Clinton. What Ted Cruz asked about was not an investigation of Hillary Clinton.
No.
Now, Halligan tried to hide that by calling it Person 1. Like, and saying, oh, it's about Person 1. And then you say, oh, who's Person 1? Person 1's Hillary Clinton. But then you've forgotten that Ted Cruz didn't say that.
Yeah.
He said the Clinton administration. The judge is not going to be an idiot. The judge is going to know that Halligan is trying to pull the wool over their eyes by covering up the fact that Ted Cruz muffed his question.
Yeah.
Why does that matter? It's obviously a slip of the tongue. Ted Cruz is clearly not actually asking about Bill Clinton's administration from the 90s. He's talking about Hillary and Russiagate and all that kind of stuff. It's got nothing to do with Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
So why do we care that Ted Cruz muffed the question? Everyone knows what he meant. But here's the thing. The government needs to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Comey understood perfectly what he was asked.
Wow, okay.
There wasn't even the slightest amount of confusion or hesitation. He knew 100% definitely what was being asked of him, and he specifically tried to lie about it. They need to prove. That's what they need to prove to make their case. That's hard to prove when the question is ambiguous and confusing.
That slip of the tongue saves him.
Well,
that's huge.
Look.
Well, it saves,
in this case, it saves him, but there's better coming.
Wow. Okay,
I'll just say that right now. Yeah. But in this case, that slip of the tongue, that could be enough to dismiss the case all on its own. That slip of the tongue.
Cruz is kicking himself.
Yes. So he answered the question about the Clinton administration. You can't use that to prosecute him for false statements about something that has nothing to do with the Clinton administration. If it was the other way around, and he was asked about the Clinton investigation, and then he answered the question about the Clinton administration, and when he was in court, he said, I was just talking about the Clinton administration.
That's his fault. Yeah,
people go, no, you can't get away with that.
Good try.
You were asked about the investigation. That's what your answer's about. He is answering the question he's asked. That really undermines the indictment.
Wow.
But that's still just scratching the surface. Let's go again. Do you remember who I said person 3 was? Dan Richmond. That's right. Comey's old buddy. Let's keep going with the indictment. What's the next thing it says? That statement was false because as James Comey then and there knew, he in fact had authorized person 3, Dan Richmond, to serve as an anonymous source in news reports regarding an FBI investigation concerning person 1, Hillary Clinton. Okay, so Comey's lying because he knew he had authorized Dan Richmond to serve as an anonymous source in news reports, right? Let's look at that exchange with Ted Cruz again. I'm going to play the whole lot again. I know you just watched it, but this is confusing, so watch it again and tell me, does this sound like Ted Cruz and James Comey are talking about Dan Richmond?
He then asked you, quote, have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration? You responded again under oath, no. Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. What Mr. McCabe is saying and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
Does it sound like Ted Cruz and James Comey are talking about Dan Richmond?
Well, I think there's a bit of an issue here, Chaz, which is that clip itself proves that you can't always trust Ted Cruz to get his words.
He's really messed up his words. So he's talking about Dan Richmond.
There's a chance that he was probably referring to Dan the entire way through.
I'd love to see Halligan try and argue that in court. He's
but
obviously...
$5 she does.
You're probably right. He is obviously talking about Andrew McCabe. James Comey is obviously answering a question about Andrew McCabe. This is no slip of the tongue. It is very clear what these people are talking about, and it is not what Halligan said they were talking about.
That's so poor.
She's completely screwed this up.
That's just bad.
How can they possibly prosecute him for stating false statements about Dan Richmond when he is clearly answering a question when he makes those statements about Andrew McCabe? What's happening here is they know they can't make a case out of Andrew McCabe, so they're trying to make one out of Dan Richmond and hope that you don't notice that their evidence is for another person.
You just hope you don't notice.
That's how sloppy this indictment
Like when
is.
I edit a podcast at 2 a.m. and just hope that the Peppers don't notice I'm missing a camera.
Yeah. They need to prove, remember, that Comey was trying to lie about Dan Richmond when he answered a question about Andrew McCabe. That is not possible to prove. The indictment is fatally flawed. I just can't see how they can squirm out of this. I just have no idea how they can try. It is so sloppy. I'm going to quote you Comey's submission now, just to show you that this is what they're talking about. The indictment omits Senator Cruz's words that explicitly narrow the focus of his questions to Mr. McCabe and misleadingly implies that the questioning related to Mr. Richmond. In fact, Mr. Comey's September 2020 exchange with Senator Cruz made no reference whatsoever to Mr. Richmond, who ultimately appears in the indictment as person 3. Instead, the context of the exchange confirms that Senator Cruz was asking about leaks by Mr. McCabe. Indeed, Senator Cruz asked Mr. Comey whether he or Mr. McCabe was telling the truth. In other words, the indictment presents an inaccurate description of the testimony at the heart of this case. I think it's hard to argue with that. Number 3. So that's number 2. There's more. Number 3.
Well, halfway.
Comey is telling the truth. This is their submission.
Yeah, sure.
Let's forget all the problems so far. Let's assume they could somehow make this indictment survive. What did he say that they say is a lie?
Mm-hmm.
He says he stands by his testimony from a few years earlier to Chuck Grassley.
Yes.
That's what he says.
Yeah.
Let's say they can somehow get back to Grassley and prove that he was lying then. Because that's what they're trying to do, right? Let's say they can do that somehow. Let's look at the testimony to Charles Grassley from 2017.
Director Comey, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
Never.
Question 2 on relatively related. Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
No.
Yeah, so Chuck Grassley, as you say, he needs to talk to Ted Cruz about how to ask a question clearly, so there's no confusion.
Yeah.
But anyway. Okay, so Comey said, assuming that they can somehow achieve what they're trying to achieve, keep the indictment going, go back to those grabs.
Yep.
He's saying he has never been a source of leaks about the Clinton investigation. No one's contradicting that. He also said he did not authorize anyone working at the FBI to be a source of leaks.
Right, and
that's what they're contesting, right?
Yeah.
We know he didn't authorize Andrew McCabe to be a source of leaks because even according to Andrew McCabe told Comey about him being a source after he leaked.
Yeah.
So therefore Comey
couldn't have done it.
Couldn't have authorized it by definition. And besides, Andrew McCabe says, I don't need authorization. I was the deputy head of the FBI. I can leak whatever the hell I want, which is also true. Okay, what about Richmond? Assuming they can somehow get to Richmond, what about Richmond? He has said many times now, publicly and under oath, that Comey did not authorize him to leak about the Clinton investigation. That's the first thing. That's a pretty big detail.
Good start.
The one time that Comey did ask him to leak something was in May 2017, and it wasn't about the Clinton investigation. It was about Trump.
Oh.
All right? It was about Trump. It was about Comey's meeting with Trump.
Okay.
It was about Trump politics.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the Clinton investigation. And at that point in time, in May 2017, when Comey did ask him to leak that, Dan Richmond wasn't working at the FBI.
Ah, okay.
And the question that Chuck Grassley asked was, did you authorize someone else at the FBI? Dan Richmond was not someone else at the FBI at the time that he leaked.
So it doesn't even matter that he did leak about the Trump investigation.
Yeah. But also, it wasn't the Trump investigation. It was Trump. It was like that.
Oh, okay.
It was like the dinner that Comey had with Trump. It was about, like, do you remember?
Oh, yeah. So he's still not even.
Yeah, it wasn't even Trump investigation. But if they could, even if they could make the case,
he doesn't even work there.
It doesn't even work then because he was asked, did you authorize someone
else
at the FBI?
And he doesn't work there.
It didn't work there. So Comey was telling the truth. So that's the next defense. And the fourth one was that Halligan, the U.S. attorney, was illegally appointed and is in no position to prosecute anyone. I don't get lost in the weeds here, but this is a very real question. So I'll try and get into the details a little bit without getting too far into it. Under Section 546C of Congress's laws governing U.S. attorneys, it says about interim appointments for U.S. attorneys. So when there isn't a U.S. attorney, having someone filling in while they're waiting for someone to be appointed. A person appointed as U.S. attorney under this section may serve until the expiration of 120 days after appointment by the Attorney General. So they're talking about, these are temporaries, okay? These are not people who have been confirmed. They can serve for 120 days after being appointed by the Attorney General as an interim U.S. attorney, right? So what happens after 120 days is expired? Is there no U.S. attorney? Is there just a hole until someone's confirmed? What if no one's confirmed? There's just no U.S. attorneys from then on after 120 days. Is that what's going on? 546D says, if an appointment expires, the district court for such district may appoint a United States attorney to serve until the vacancy is filled. The order of appointment by the court shall be filled with the clerk of the court. Okay, so after 120 days, the district court can approve. If the district court approves the person that the Attorney General wants, they can keep on going after 120 days. But you need the approval of the district court. Unless you have someone confirmed. Okay. That seems straightforward to me. Seems straightforward to you?
Yes, even to me.
Well, the previous guy, Eric Siebert, was already an interim appointee. He wasn't an official appointee. He hadn't been confirmed. and he'd already served 120 days.
Uh-oh.
Without being confirmed. The Democrats have been slow walking confirmations in the Senate, like they tend to.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was just serving, and the district court was happy for him to continue on.
Okay.
So he was just still serving.
So he was just going to keep on cracking on.
He was just keep on cracking on as an interim U.S. attorney. So he was fine.
Okay.
But then Trump got rid of him and put Halligan in there. And so there was no clock left for another interim appointee.
No.
120 days was up.
It doesn't even matter if the district approves it. Yeah.
No, if the district approves it, it's okay.
Oh, okay. Her.
Yeah,
sure.
her. Yeah,
cool.
if the district court says Halligan's fine, then that's fine.
Okay,
Then
right.
keep on replacing, the district court can keep on replacing people.
Well, it's a good thing the district court did approve her.
Not quite. So, yeah, obviously they didn't want the bar of her because she was not an actual prosecutor. And so they didn't approve, and there's a problem for Trump right there.
Okay.
Normally, it's not an issue because presidents don't normally routinely ignore the Senate and Congress and just appoint people as interims forever without trying to get them confirmed. But that's what Trump does. This is not just happening here. This is happening all over America. There are interim appointees who haven't been confirmed, who Trump is just trying to force to stay in there against the will of the district court. The district courts don't like any of his interim appointees. And one after another, they're getting struck down. Alina Habba, if you recall, his lawyer, Alina Habba, she's like 35, the young woman who represented him, who was really hopeless, who kept on losing all her motions last year. He made her the U.S. attorney in New Jersey. And the district court was going, nah, no way. And they found that she was illegally appointed.
Okay.
So right now in New Jersey, no one's doing anything because they're worried that anything they do is going to get invalidated because there isn't a valid U.S. attorney there. So this is a problem not just here, it's everywhere. Halligan is going to face that problem. Whether the judge in this case agrees with the judge who ruled Alina Habba as illegally appointed, we don't know. We'll find out. But that's really, really on the cards. Now, Halligan is undoubtedly going to argue that Trump sacking Siebert gives him another 120 days. They just start the clock again.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to argue.
Yep.
Or they might say that you can have more than 120-day period. We'll find out. We'll see what the court says. But if the judge rules in Comey's favour on this question, his charges are gone.
He's fully clear.
Yeah, because the statute of limitations is long
well
done.
done now.
Yeah. So she's the one who filed the charges. Anything she does becomes automatically invalid as the fruit of the poisonous tree, and he's free.
Boom, boom.
It's part of their submission, actually, is quite cheeky. They've actually cited Eileen Cannon, the Florida judge who let Trump off the documents.
Oh, yes.
The classified documents case, because she said that special counsel Jack Smith was invalidly appointed because he hadn't been confirmed by the Senate.
That's fun. That's clever.
Yeah.
I like that.
And her arguments applied just as much to Halligan now. Yeah. So they're actually citing her, knowing it's going to go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And knowing that Clarence Thomas is just the biggest fan of Eileen Cannon, and
that's cool.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see just how much of a hypocrite
smart
Clarence Thomas is in this regard. But anyway, it's a bit cheeky, but look, I don't think they even need that. I reckon the thing I said before at Dan Richmond, that's the one that's really going to doom this. I feel.
Yeah.
So that's the ins and outs of James Comey's defense and why I think his charges are going to be dismissed without a trial. We'll find out. There's going to be back and forth between submissions for two sides on these questions for about a month. The judge is going to rule in the middle of December. If none of those defences get up, then the trial will be on January 5 and will be expected to last 2 to 3 days. I don't think we'll be seeing a trial on January 5. Okay, a couple of related things. I mentioned before about the Pam Bondi tweet.
Yeah.
Pam. Hey, Pam! The Wall Street Journal did confirm last week that, if you trust them, that it was meant to be a private DM and Trump stuffed up. Okay, so the president was ordering the Attorney General to indict Comey, Schiff and Letitia James. I've already talked about why that's relevant to the Comey case, but I think there's another element which I think is worth just stopping over, and that is, let's read that first sentence again. Pam, I've reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially same old stories last time, all talk, no action, nothing's been done. So do you get that? The president is combing Twitter, looking for feedback, and he takes his orders from those replies. That's what that tells us. That's the way he actually works. I mean, because he's not lying there. Like that is him. That's him.
Just a message.
That's him just chatting to Pam Bondi, one-to-one, saying, look, I've been looking through the posts and they're saying this.
Hey, man, I've seen some real stuff on Twitter.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's the way he actually works. Now, that's scary because these people he's referring to, the people in the Truth Social replies, they are the worst people on earth. They really are. They shouldn't be influencing anything, these people. But also, it's very useful information for future historians, quite seriously, about the feedback loop that is MAGA.
Yeah.
These people cultishly follow what Trump says, and he cultishly follows what they say. It's a
incredible,
fascinating cycle. I just want to flag that. That's something I'm not sure people fully consider.
Yeah.
And also, there have been a few people running the line that Letitia James in particular, even though I'm not talking about her, can't complain about being prosecuted through lawfare because she herself ran to prosecute Trump and used whatever she could to get him with lawfare. Look, I was never a Letitia James fan. I disliked her campaigning to get Trump. I didn't like it at the time. I said that on this podcast, as you would know, Peppers. I also was not the world's biggest fan of either her case or the other New York case against Trump, even though it was a guilty verdict. I still didn't like the case. I didn't like it. I support the appeals against it. Even if you write off the Letitia James case, though, in which Trump was also found liable, I should say, there were still two other Jack Smith cases.
Right.
And those were very different. Those were legit cases. One was about January 6th, which obviously happened.
Okay, yeah.
That happened, folks. And recall that back when he was being impeached, senators like Mitch McConnell were begging for Trump to be criminally charged instead of being impeached. That was the argument Mitch McConnell used for not finding him guilty in the impeachment trial. Wow. He said, no, he shouldn't be. This should not be a political case. It should be a criminal case. That's what he said. It was Republicans who originally demanded January 6th become a legal matter and not a political matter. Republicans insisted on that.
Wow.
Also, the documents case was obviously a slam dunk case. Obviously. I still can't believe he got away with that. Far from being a political hack job, Jack Smith filed that case in Florida when he could have easily filed it in Washington, D.C. If he'd filed it in Washington, D.C., Trump may well have ended up being found guilty before the election. That was going to be a quick case.
Whoa.
It was Eileen Cannon that slowed it down. But Smith filed it in Florida, where he was at risk of getting the exact kind of judge that he ended up getting.
What happened?
And that judge screwed it up for him. Why did he do that? Is it because he's a moron? No, it's because he was trying to go by the book. And the most obvious place to file is where the defendant lives.
Yeah.
That's what you're meant to do. There is no comparison between Jack Smith and what we are seeing now. And anyone who pretends that the Comey case of all is anything like the documents case against Trump is either ignorant or lying to you. So I just want to flag that. We really don't have much time here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go lightning fast through Bolton and Santos.
Okay, great.
I'm not going to get dug in. The indictment for Bolton covers 18 counts of retention and transmission of national defense information. He sent classified information to his wife and his daughter in the form of his daily notes through his AOL account while he was a national security advisor. Importantly, they were not marked classified. So he could argue in court he didn't know they were classified. I suspect he will. Although he did append messages like none of which we talk about when he said.
Is this the one that and then they replied with shh?
Yes, exactly. Also, he used none of the information that's relevant here in his book. Bear in mind, he was deliberately trying to keep classified information out of his book, right?
That's funny.
So it could get published.
Yeah.
So is that a sign that he knew the information was classified? It might be. The account ended up getting hacked by Iran, and then they tried to blackmail him, so he reported to the FBI. But importantly, he never told the FBI of the material that he'd sent his family, which the hackers would have access to, which makes him seem quite reckless and suspiciously secretive.
Creates problems.
It does. I'm not sure Trump actually knew this indictment was coming. This was his reaction.
Just indicted by a grand jury in Maryland. Do you have a reaction to that?
I didn't know that. You told me for the first time, but I think he's, a bad person. I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad, but that's the way it goes.
Case against him?
That's the way it goes, right?
Look, I mean, maybe he's just acting, but it seemed to me like maybe he didn't know. Like, it's possible. I think these are legitimate charges. I'm not saying he's going to be found guilty, but I'm saying that I think that there is at least a reasonable case against Bolton here. Like, it's arguable. He has defenses, but it's definitely arguable from a government's point of view that he mishandled classified information.
Things were classified.
Yeah. And I think...
I mean, the really doesn't help.
Well, yeah, and the fact that none of it was in his book as well. He's going, okay. But what's interesting, though, is that the charges were dropped under Biden. So some might say that they were being political by dropping the charges because he was a Trump critic. But, I think it's a delicately balanced case. I think it's a bit of a 50-50 case. Could they prove that he knew the info was classified? Was he willfully hiding the docs? Did he just think he was keeping material for his memoirs, which is pretty standard stuff? Did they think he'd come off as a sympathetic witness, maybe? I don't know. We'll find out in the court. The one irony I'd say about Bolton, if Bolton was still in his good books, he would love what Trump's doing now. In Venezuela, blowing up everything.
Yeah.
In Israel, what he did in Iran. Man, Bolton would be a very happy national security advisor right now. That's the irony of this all. Trump should have hired him in his second term. Probably not a fan of his Ukraine work, but other than that. Okay, Santos. Santos was the sixth member to be expelled from the body from the House in the history of the United States.
Whoa.
They voted 311 to 114 to oust him in 2023 after a GOP-led House Ethics Committee report accused him of stealing campaign donors' money. Let's break down the Trump statement, commuting his sentence. George Santos was somewhat of a rogue, but there are many rogues throughout our country that aren't forced to serve 7 years in prison. Let's note this rogue pleaded guilty to aggravated identity theft and wire fraud charges before he was sentenced to 87 months. He pleaded guilty. I started to think about George when the subject of Democrat Senator Richard Da Nang Dick Blumenthal came up. As everyone remembers, Da Nang stated for almost 20 years that he was a proud Vietnam veteran, having endured the worst of the war, watching the wounded and dead as he raced up the hills and down the valleys, blood streaming from his face. He was a great hero. He would leak to any and all who would listen. And then it happened. He was a complete and total fraud. He never went to Vietnam. He never saw Vietnam. He never experienced the battles there or anywhere else. His war hero status and even minimal service in our military was totally completely made up. This is far worse than what George Santos did. No, it's not. Santos ripped people off $375,000 and he ripped the government off $200,000. Blumenthal didn't steal a cent. And let me remind you, 105 Republicans voted to expel Santos from the House in 2023. He was not a partisan victim. And then finally, at least Santos had the courage, conviction, and intelligence to always vote Republican. George has been in solitary confinement for long stretches of time and by all accounts has been horribly mistreated. Therefore, I just signed the commutation releasing George Santos from prison immediately. Good luck, George. Have a great life. Okay, he openly admits this is just for partisan reasons.
Fantastic.
Openly.
It's so good.
This is not new, by the way. In his first term, 36 of his 41 pardons or commutations involved people he had a personal or political connection to. Particularly damaging, by the way, because Santos was so blatant about it. He sucked up to Trump in such obvious ways, writing really, really transparent suck-ups. And he wasn't repentant at all, Santos. Normally, at least you wait till they're repentant before you give them a pardon.
Yeah.
He wasn't even slightly repentant. He's still scum. Look at this.
Well, this is about a fine. I mean, this is about paying money back. And whether you describe them as victims or just donors to the NRCC, what the court said is that they should get their money back. Will you work to try to do that?
Well, look, I can do my best to do whatever the law requires of me. So I don't know what that is. I've been out of prison for 2 days. I agreed to come here to speak with you candidly and openly and not to obfuscate. If it's required of me by the law, yes. If it's not, then no. I will do whatever the law requires me to do.
He knows that Trump commuted the restitution as well. He knows that a whole bunch of poor old people are going to be out of pocket because of this. He doesn't care. The man is scum. Two things though. First of all, Letitia James is going to be very keen on using him as an example to prove that Trump prosecutions are selective and biased.
Sure.
Because unlike with James Comey, this is a perfect parallel.
Yeah.
They were both accused of fraud, Letitia James and George Santos. Letitia James...
by a difference of like 100,000.
That's it. That's the point I was going to make. Letitia James... If you assume that she actually did commit fraud, and I don't think she did, I think it's going to be impossible to prove. But if you do think that, she made $19,000, a whopping $19,000 out of her inverted commas fraud. Santos made over $500,000. They're not the same. And Trump treated the two of them very, very differently. In particular, the guy behind the James charges is Eagle Ed Martin Jr., who was the pardon attorney that recommended Santos be pardoned. So this is all screwed up, right?
At least George Santos had the conviction to steal $500,000
yes.
instead of a pithy amount like $20K.
Yeah. So the pardon attorney, who's after Letitia James, is said, I was honoured as US pardon attorney to have played a small role in the president granting Mr. Santos clemency. Thank you, Mr. President, for making clemency great again.
That's almost as bad as make row crops great again.
Yes. And finally, one more thing about Santos, which hasn't been covered at all. This is your big takeaway. This is the good news story at the end. The little twist at the end. Santos can be charged by New York. In 2019, after Paul Manafort's pardon, New York changed their law. They altered their double jeopardy law to now have an exception for anyone who had received a reprieve, pardon, or other form of clemency from the president, because they were sick of Trump pardoning criminals. They were from New York. And obviously a federal pardon doesn't remove state charges. And also Santos lives in New York, and so do a number of his victims. So any one of them can press charges against him now under New York law, New York fraud law, and he's a sitting duck. So go get him, New York. That is the positive twist at the end. Lucky, we're over time. There is going to be an extra with Bill Wyman. We're recording on Monday. Whether it goes up on Monday night or Tuesday morning, we'll find out. But we're recording on Monday. So there's all the PEP that you can consume. Until then, stay peppy.